Chapter 1860. Su Zimo waved it off and said to Yu Hao and the other two, "I'm only at level 5 Mystic Essence Realm, and can't compare to you guys. I can't be the leader." "Boss Su, what are you talking about?" Shunfei said hurriedly. "Others may not know about your capabilities, but do you think we don't know? No one will dare to object to you being our leader." Su Zimo still shook his head. "If you guys want to set up camp here, that's not a problem. However, I won't be the leader." Yu Hao and the other two exchanged glances. Seeing Su Zimo's firm attitude, they could not persuade him anymore. Actually, Su Zimo had his own considerations and concerns for rejecting this matter. One day, he would have to leave Dragon Abyss Planet. He did not want to leave too many ties on Dragon Abyss Planet. If he were to truly become the leader of Annihilation Yang Camp, it might not be a good thing for him and Annihilation Yang Camp. Su Zimo turned to look at Duan Tianliang. "Since you're familiar with the surroundings, bring the fellow Taoists of Annihilation Yang Camp to settle down nearby and open up a spirit field. Don't worry, boss. Leave it to me." Duan Tianliang patted his chest. Su Zimo then said to Yu Hao, "This is the wilderness and is rather secluded. You guys can cultivate here in peace and build up your strength." Su Zimo pondered for a moment and took out a few storage bags, handing them to Duan Tianliang, Yu Hao and the others. "There are some essence-gathering elixirs here. Take them and cultivate for the time being. Raise your cultivation as soon as possible." "Brother Su, this." Yu Hao was a little embarrassed and was about to decline. Su Zimo had already turned and walked towards his cave abode. "I'm going into seclusion after this as well. If there's nothing important, don't look for me." "Thank you, boss," Duan Tianliang shouted happily. Even though he didn't contribute much by accompanying Su Zimo to Dragon Lake City this time, he was filled with anxiety and fear all along the way, and he was scared half to death. Su Zimo gave him some essence-gathering elixirs as compensation and consolation. Duan Tianliang opened his storage bag and took a look. His gaze was instantly transfixed. Originally, he thought that Su Zimo would reward him with dozens or even hundreds of soul-condensing pills, which was already considered rare. After all, back when he was in Wind Snow Ridge, it would take him decades to accumulate 100 soul-condensing pills. But he did not expect that the number of essence-condensing pills in this storage bag was astonishing. He was dazzled. Duan Tianliang took a few deep breaths and counted several times. 10,000 pills. A total of 10,000 core solidifying pills. A strong sense of happiness arose spontaneously. Duan Tianliang rolled his eyes and almost passed out on the spot. On the other side, Yu Hao and the others opened their storage bags to take a look as well. All of them gasped and their expressions changed starkly. In Yu Hao's storage bag, there were 100,000 core condensation pills. Shunfei and Gu Wenjun each had 50,000 pills in their storage bags. To Yu Hao, these 100,000 origin condensation pills were enough for him to cultivate for a few hundred years. Actually, Su Zimo had close to 10 million origin condensing pills in his storage pouch, but he did not give too many to Yu Hao and the others. Given Yu Hao, Duan Tianliang, and the others' physiques and cultivations, the number of origin condensation pills they could refine every day was limited. For example, Duan Tianliang needed more than 2 months to refine a single origin condensation pill. Yu Hao's time was shorter, and he could only refine a single pill a day at most. If he gave them too many origin condensation pills, they would not be able to digest them. However, Su Zimo was different. He was Qinglian's true body. When he was at level 4 Mystic Essence Realm, he could refine 10 origin condensation pills in a day. Now that he was at level 5 Mystic Essence Realm, his need for origin condensation pills was even greater. He could even refine 100 origin condensation pills in a day. He would consume more than 30,000 origin condensation pills in a year of cultivation. This demand was extremely shocking, but it was also within common sense. Creation Qinglian had already grown to grade 9. Su Zimo's current cultivation was not only his own, but also Creation Qinglian's growth. It was not that easy for Creation Qinglian to grow. Fortunately, Su Zimo had obtained a large number of origin condensation pills during this trip to Dragon Lake City. That was how he could maintain his cultivation. Zuyanga. In a dark room, there were 3 people sitting. One of them was quite handsome, but he only had one arm. His long sleeves were empty. He was the young master of Zuyanga, Chen Xianyang. In a month's time, Chen Xuanyang's injuries had healed quite a bit. His face had also regained a bit of color. However, his arm was forever broken. Unless he cultivated to the earth deity realm, he would never be able to regrow it. Opposite Chen Xianyang sat a level 7 mystic immortal. He was the other guardian of Zuyanga Wei Shan. There was another person sitting in the middle. However, this person was hidden in the darkness, and his face could not be seen clearly. One could only vaguely make out a rough outline. This person was the Valley Master of Zuyanga. The news of the battle in Dragon Lake City had already spread. In this battle, the evil wolf army had suffered the most losses. Next was Zuyanga. Not only had they lost close to 5,000 soldiers, but they had also lost a level 7 mystic immortal guardian. Chen Xianyang had also lost an arm. Since the establishment of Zuyanga, there had been countless battles, big and small, but they had never encountered such a huge setback. The atmosphere in the room was a little gloomy and irritating. "Father, what should we do about this?" Chen Xianyang could not help but ask. "We can't just let this go. If we can't tear Su Zimo into pieces, I'm afraid our Zuyanga will be laughed at by countless people." Wei Shan said in a low voice. "Valley Master, during this period of time, the reputation of Zuyanga and the evil wolf army has indeed fallen to the bottom. Many forces and cultivators have begun to question our strength and want to break away from our control and jurisdiction. I heard that some forces are even restless and want to replace Zuyanga." The Valley Master of Zuyanga was silent for a while before asking, "What do you think?" "I suggest that we immediately search for Su Zimo's whereabouts. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we have to find him." Chen Xianyang said hatefully. Wei Shan was silent and did not agree. The Valley Master of Zuyanga said indifferently, "If that Su Zimo wants to hide, not to mention using all of Zuyanga's forces, even if the 8 forces join forces, they might not be able to find him. This kid is indeed a hidden danger. Fortunately, his cultivation is not high, so he is not a big problem. Don't worry, Xianyang. When this kid appears again, I will personally capture him and hand him over to you to deal with." "Thank you, Father." Chen Xianyang was overjoyed and hurriedly knelt down to thank him. If his father was willing to take action, as long as Su Zimo dared to appear, he would definitely die. The Valley Master of Zuyanga pondered for a while and said, "This kid can hide for now, but he can't hide forever. One day he will appear again. When that time comes, it will be the time of his death. What we need to do now is wait patiently." Wei Shan nodded and said, "This kid's cultivation is not high. Even if he hides and cultivates for hundreds or thousands of years, it will be difficult for him to achieve anything. The most important thing now is to stabilize Zuyanga's position and strength." The Valley Master of Zuyanga said, "Wei Shan, go and deal with the forces that are disloyal. Anyone who dares to challenge Zuyanga's authority will be killed without mercy." "Understood," Wei Shan replied with a murderous look in his eyes. End of chapter. Chapter 1861. In a seclusion cave abode in the wilderness. A green figure sat cross-legged with his black hair fluttering despite the absence of wind. He circulated a mental cultivation technique and breathed in the essence chi of heaven and earth, swirling around his body and rising into the air. The entire cave abode was like an immortal realm. Although he became famous in a single battle in Dragon Lake City, Su Zimo was not arrogant. He knew very well that his cultivation realm was still too low. He did not even have the confidence to win against Lu Tong, who was a Class 8 Mystic Immortal, let alone a Class 9 Mystic Immortal. Furthermore, this was only the Dragon Lake planet. After all, the Dragon Lake planet was only a remote planet under the jurisdiction of the Great Gene Immortal Country and Azure Cloud County. Even the native immortals stationed in Dragon Lake City had limited means and combat strength. True geniuses and monsters would definitely not come to the Dragon Lake planet. Su Zimo would definitely face these experts when he left the Dragon Lake planet in the future. He had to raise his cultivation realm as soon as possible. He took out a core formation elixir from his storage bag and swallowed it before beginning his cultivation. Time flowed like a shuttle. Su Zimo had been cultivating in the cave abode for 50 years. 50 years was a fleeting time for other cultivators, and their cultivation realm would not change much. However, Su Zimo had already cultivated to the peak of level 5 Mystic Essence realm, and was only a step away from level 6 Mystic Essence realm. Qinglian's true body, coupled with sufficient cultivation resources, and a powerful cultivation technique, like the perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra, could achieve such an effect. None of them could be missing. Su Zimo opened his eyes and woke up from his seclusion. He had encountered a bottleneck. Of course, this bottleneck was nothing to him. As long as he continued to cultivate and consume core formation elixirs, he would be able to break through to level 6 Mystic Essence realm in a few hundred years, or even a few decades. However, Su Zimo did not force himself to cultivate. His spirit consciousness moved, and a leaf that was half yellow and half green flew out from his storage bag. It was the Sualua leaf. It was merely a leaf, yet it contained a mysterious force. Su Zimo's divine sense only touched it slightly, but he could feel that the leaf was like a vast starry sky, filled with endless mysteries. If this leaf were to fall into the hands of other forces, they would definitely treat it as a precious treasure and store it carefully to increase the surrounding yuan qi of heaven and earth. Su Zimo took out the Sua Lua leaf because he wanted to refine it and break through the bottleneck. Back in Tianhuang mainland, he had obtained a section of carefree wood. Although it was only a small piece of dead wood, it had an extremely obvious effect on the growth of Qinglian's true body. But this Sua Lua leaf was only half withered. It must contain an even greater strength. Just as he was about to refine the Sua Lua leaf, his entire body shook. In a trance, he seemed to have fallen into an indescribable mirage. The cave abode had already disappeared. Around him stood countless monks with their palms pressed together, softly chanting scriptures that contained vast divine power. The monks looked ahead with pity in their eyes. Su Zimo looked over instinctively. Not far ahead, there was an ancient tree that was tall. It had lush leaves and strange leaves. Every single leaf was made up of 7 leaves and shone with a Buddhist light. Sua Luo tree. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He realized that the ancient tree before him was one of the legendary sacred trees of the Buddhist monasteries. The Sua Luo tree. Beneath the ancient tree, an ancient Buddha assumed a lotus position. He had a benevolent expression and a gentle gaze as he smiled while holding flowers. Su Zimo's gaze met with that person's. There was a boom in his mind. Instantly, he felt as though he was sitting beneath the Sua Luo tree and listening to the Sanskrit chants of the Buddhas, entering a mysterious state. It was as though he had fused with the ancient Buddha and was experiencing everything that the ancient Buddha was experiencing. He was comprehending what the ancient Buddha saw, thought and thought. The ancient Buddha's comprehension of Buddhism had already reached its peak. Compared to this ancient Buddha, Su Zimo's attainments in the Buddhist Dharma were as insignificant as dust. He could clearly sense that the ancient Buddha was undergoing nirvana and transcending beneath the Sua Luo tree. Su Zimo came to a realization. He could vaguely sense that this was the scene of the Buddha transcending nirvana beneath the Sua Luo tree in the past. The Buddha was imparting the Tao through the Sua Luo tree. As Su Zimo listened to the Buddhist sutras being chanted beside his ears, he suddenly realized that these Buddhist sutras had many similarities to the perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra that he cultivated. At that moment, through the nirvana of the Buddha's Sua Luo tree, he had a brand new understanding of this Buddhist sutra. If anyone was in this cave abode, they would definitely see an extremely shocking scene. Su Zimo hovered in midair with countless mysterious golden Sanskrit revolving around him. There seemed to be a vast Sanskrit chanting reverberating endlessly within the cave abode. In fact, gigantic halos of light shone behind Su Zimo's head. If anyone from the Buddhist monastery saw this, they would most likely be shocked and kneel on the ground in worship. Right then Su Zimo's body shuddered. The various phenomenons around him vanished instantly. Su Zimo woke up from that wondrous comprehension. The Sua Luo tree leaf in front of him had already withered completely and floated down slowly, turning into an ordinary withered leaf. When he refined the Sua Luo tree leaf, he made contact with the Buddha's gaze and received the Tao imparting from the Buddha. It seemed as though hundreds or thousands of years had passed. However, in reality, it was merely a few breaths of time in this cave abode. The illusion of time was extremely wondrous. Su Zimo sensed it, and could not help but be delighted. In just these few breaths of time, his cultivation had actually broken through to the 6th level of the mystic origin stage, without anyone noticing. The Buddha's imparting of the Tao through the Sua Luo tree leaf was an unimaginable opportunity. The bottleneck he encountered was nothing much. The gains he obtained in those few breaths of time were much greater than what he obtained after cultivating for dozens of years. After refining the Sua Luo tree leaf, Qinglian's true body had an extremely obvious growth as well. Su Zimo suppressed the joy in his heart and waved his hand with his spirit consciousness. A streak of light darted in from outside the cave abode. It was the brilliance of a message talisman. The reason why he woke up from his comprehension was because of the same fluctuation that came from outside the cave abode. Wind Snow Ridge is in trouble. The stream of light dissipated and revealed 5 elegant words. Su Zimo frowned, and his expression darkened. Back when he left Wind Snow Ridge, he had given Xia Qingying a message talisman and instructed her to tear the talisman if she encountered any danger, so that he would know. That message talisman was meant as a precaution to begin with. To think that something would really happen to Wind Snow Ridge. Without hesitation, Su Zimo pushed open the door and walked out of the cave abode. "Boss, you're out of seclusion?" Duan Tianliang hurried over. Yu Hao and the others appeared one after another when they heard the commotion. "Brother Su, did something happen?" Yu Hao asked when he saw that something was amiss with Su Zimo's expression. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, "Wind Snow Ridge is in trouble. I'll head over to take a look." Chapter 1862. "Boss, I'll go with you," Duan Tianliang immediately said. "Although my cultivation isn't high, I've stayed in Snow Wind Ridge for many years. I'm also someone from there." This time, Duan Tianliang did not choose to back down. "Brother Su, Annihilation Camp has been under your protection for so many years. Today, we can't just sit back and do nothing. I'll go with you." Yu Hao also stepped forward. However, before he could finish, Su Zimo had already leaped into the air and turned into a ray of golden light. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived at the horizon. His speed was shockingly fast. The situation in Snow Wind Ridge seemed to be a little dangerous. Su Zimo did not dare to delay. If he went with Yu Hao and the others, it might be too late by the time they arrived at Snow Wind Ridge. As for Su Zimo, he released his Heaven's Foot, earth-traversing golden light, and other mystic skills. Once again, he released his innate divine powers, and a pair of golden wings grew behind him. With a flap of his wings, he traveled thousands of kilometers in an instant. Yu Hao and the others were shocked. With such speed, it was no wonder that Lu Tong had returned empty-handed. Yu Hao suddenly asked, "Just now, did you notice Brother Su's cultivation?" "No." Shen Fei shook his head and said, "It's only been 50 years. What changes can there be? He's still at Mystic Ian Stage 5. In the upper realm, the improvement of one's cultivation was measured in thousands, or even tens of thousands of years. 50 years was just a fleeting time for them. They did not feel anything. For example, although Yu Hao and the others had sufficient cultivation resources, their cultivation did not change at all after 50 years. Brother Su seems to be a Stage 6 mystic immortal," Yu Hao said slowly. "What?" Everyone was shocked. In just 50 years, Su Zimo had broken through again and reached Mystic Ian Stage 6? Such a cultivation speed was too shocking and unbelievable. Yu Hao shook his head and said, "Maybe I saw wrongly. Brother Su just came out of seclusion and went far away. I didn't check carefully." "Big brother, you must have seen wrongly," Shen Fei said with a smile. "It's impossible to reach Mystic Ian Stage 6 from Mystic Ian Stage 5 in 50 years. Even a reincarnated immortal can't do that." "Not necessarily," Duan Tianliang said. "Others might not be able to do it, but Boss can definitely do it." "Woof." Big Yellow nodded as well. They understood Su Zimo a little more than Yu Hao and the others. They were well aware of Su Zimo's uniqueness. Just the fact that he could gather the chi of heaven and earth was beyond common sense. Big brother, no matter what, we should go to Wind Snow Ridge and help as soon as possible, Gu Wenjun said. Yu Hao nodded and said, there's no time to lose. Let's set off now. Wind Snow Ridge. The flames of war swirled in the air. Shadows of people appeared one after another. Slaughter was everywhere. Blood splattered everywhere. Wails, roars, and cries for help intertwined together like a shura shrouded in blood. This could not be considered a battle. It was more like a massacre. Zuying's massacre of Feng Shuling. Even though Snowwind Ridge possessed almost 10,000 people, and could be considered to be a power that was neither large nor small, but most of them were first or second level mysterious immortal realm herb farmers. The real guards of Snowwind Ridge were only slightly more than 1,000 people. Even these guards were mostly third-level mysterious immortals. The number of fourth-level mysterious immortals was extremely small. This time, Zuyingu was led by Chen Xianyang personally. There were a total of 20,000 soldiers, and 3 seventh-level mysterious immortals as bodyguards. In Zuyingu's army, the weakest cultivators were 4th or 5th level mysterious immortals. There were also many 6th level mysterious immortals. Whether it was in terms of numbers or overall strength, Snowwind Ridge was too weak. Among the 20,000 soldiers, only half of Zuyingu's cultivators attacked. The remaining 10,000 soldiers surrounded Snowwind Ridge so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. Even though the cultivators of Snowwind Ridge had already been defeated and fled in all directions, they could not escape at all. Within Snowwind Ridge, corpses were everywhere, and blood flowed like a river. The immortal herbs in the spiritual field had already withered and fallen into a pool of blood. A one-armed man dressed in silver-white armor rode a tall horse as he stood in front of the Blood Sun Valley's army. He looked at the scene with an excited expression as his eyes revealed a savage and bloody glint. This person was the young master of Zuyingu, Chen Xianyang. Kill! 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 Chen Xianyang grinned and shouted excitedly. Other than that be asterisk tch xia qingying. Kill everyone else. Don't leave a single person alive. One of the Zuyingu's bodyguards, Wei Shan, frowned slightly and said softly, Young master, if there are cultivators who want to pledge allegiance to Zuyingu, why don't we spare their lives? Don't spare them. Chen Xianyang waved his hand and said coldly, kill them all. Only then can we establish our might, and let all the forces in this area know the consequences of disobeying Zuyingu. Wei Shan sighed internally, and did not persuade him anymore. Ever since Chen Xianyang suffered a crushing defeat in the 100,000 Mountains 50 years ago, and lost his arm, his style of doing things changed a lot, and his temperament became unreasonable and ruthless. Before this, although Chen Xianyang was ruthless, he would still pretend to be a gentleman on the surface. After losing his arm, he no longer hid his inner thoughts, and tore off his mask to reveal his ferocious face. If it was in the past, Chen Xianyang would definitely not do what he did today, in order to protect his image. But now he could do anything for his own goals. Within Snowwind Ridge, Xia Qingying was bathed in blood, and hugged her father's corpse with tears streaming down her face in grief. At this moment, she felt completely disheartened. She even wanted to end her own life here, and follow her father. During this period, many cultivators from the Blood Sun Valley passed by her, but none of them harmed her life. She knew that this must be Chen Xuanyang's order. Hearing the cries of the cultivators of Snowwind Ridge, Xia Qingying took a deep breath, and seemed to have made a decision. She wiped away the tears on her face with a resolute gaze. She put down her father's corpse and shouted in the direction of the Zuyingu army, Chen Xianyang, give the order to stop and let the others go. I, Xia Qingying, will be at your disposal and agree to all your requests. Missy, you can't. In the pool of blood, a person was covered in injuries and struggled to stand up. It was old Yan. A Zuyingu cultivator charged over on his armored horse, and crashed into old Yan's body heavily amidst his laughter. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Old Yan rolled dozens of feet away, and fell into a pool of blood, coughing out mouthfuls of blood. His eyes were dim and his life aura was weak. Ha 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 ha. Chen Xianyang laughed loudly. B***tch. It's too late for you to beg for mercy now. I've killed all the living beings in Snowwind Ridge, and you're still one of mine. Xia Qingying clenched her fists tightly as her entire body trembled. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she tried her best to not let her tears flow out. Chen Xianyang, Xia Qingying said loudly, you're a coward. One of your arms was cut off. Don't think of recovering in this lifetime. You'll never be able to compare to him. These words directly poked at Chen Xuanyang's sore spot. His face instantly darkened as he recalled the past, and he gnashed his teeth with hatred. His expression was filled with resentment, and even his features became slightly warped. B***tch, let me tell you, Chen Xianyang said coldly, that Su Zimo offended a few great powers of Dragon Lake City, and he utterly doesn't dare to show himself. If he dares to show himself, I, Chen Xianyang, will definitely avenge my lost arm and wash away the humiliation. Chen Xianyang, I'll give you this chance. Right at this moment, a loud shout sounded out from the distant horizon. It was like a shocking thunder that rolled over, and it contained boundless rage and killing intent. Chapter 1863. What? When he heard that voice, Chen Xuanyang's heart skipped a beat, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Even though 50 years had passed, he was not unfamiliar with that voice at all, and guessed the identity of that person almost immediately. Su Zimo. How was that possible? This person had disappeared for 50 years. How could he appear here at this time? Chen Xianyang was still in disbelief, and could not help but look towards the direction of the voice. When the voice first sounded, it was still in the sky. However, when Chen Xianyang turned around to look, Su Zimo's figure had already arrived in front of the army, and was less than 100 feet away from him. Su Zimo's expression was cold, and his gaze was like a knife that emitted a chilling intent, as though it could pierce Chen Xuanyang's heart. Chen Xuanyang's expression changed drastically. When he was looked at by Su Zimo, he could not help but recall the scene 50 years ago, and was so frightened that his expression changed drastically, and his soul left his body. Just now, he had long forgotten the big words he had said. This figure was like a nightmare that had haunted him for a whole 50 years. It was impossible to get rid of it in his memory. No one could imagine the fear and influence that Su Zimo brought to Chen Xianyang. Or rather, cultivators who did not experience the Battle of the 100,000 Mountains, and did not witness the battle at Dragon Lake City, would find it difficult to understand Chen Xuanyang's fear at this moment. Chen Xuanyang's heart was about to jump out of his chest. He urged the mount beneath him, and was about to turn and flee towards Zuyanggu in a panic. The battle at Dragon Lake City 50 years ago had long spread throughout Dragon Lake Planet. Many cultivators in Zuyanggu had also heard of Su Zimo's ferocious reputation. Now that they saw Su Zimo with their own eyes, they were shocked as well. When the Zuyanggu army saw Chen Xianyang fleeing without a fight, they became restless. Both sides had yet to fight, but the Zuyanggu army was already in a mess. However, a pair of golden wings grew behind Su Zimo's back, and his aura was monstrous. He was like a god that broke through the air and was unstoppable. Wind Snow Ridge. Xia Qingying looked at the figure that rushed over at lightning speed, and the tears in her eyes could no longer be controlled, and fell onto her clothes. She tore the message talisman apart as a last resort. In her heart, she did not dare to hope that Su Zimo would appear. After all, the two of them did not have a deep relationship. A person who had disappeared for 50 years would come out of seclusion, just because of her talisman? Xia Qingying could see the hardships on Su Zimo's face. It was unknown how long this person had been running to reach Wind Snow Ridge at the last moment. Father, do you see it? Xia Qingying sobbed and said, Wind Snow Ridge is saved, we are saved. There was no response. The Lord lords the Wind Snow Mountain, Father. Open your eyes and take a look. Xia Qingying could no longer hold on, and collapsed on the ground weakly. She hugged her father's corpse and cried out loud. She was no longer worried about herself or Wind Snow Mountain. She believed that with this person around, he would definitely be able to protect Wind Snow Mountain through this calamity. Some of the cultivators who were lucky enough to survive in Wind Snow Mountain were also excited when they saw Su Zimo. Lao Yin was lying in a pool of blood, and was about to lose consciousness. But when he heard that familiar voice, His mind shook, and he struggled to sit up as if he had regained consciousness. Is that Brother Su? Brother Su is back to see us. Lao Yin smiled in a daze. Guardian, save me. Seeing that Su Zimo was getting closer and closer, Chen Xinyang became more and more frightened and shouted loudly. He had a feeling that Su Zimo was going to kill him on the spot this time round. Su Zimo was coming for him. Wei Shan's expression was solemn, but he still stopped Chen Xinyang and said in a low voice, Young master, don't panic. You are the commander of the army. If you run away, the morale of the army will be in chaos. How can we suppress this person then? You don't understand. Chen Xinyang roared. This Su Zimo will definitely kill me today. He will never let me go. Young master, our Zuyinga army has more than 20,000 soldiers and 3 guardians. How can we be afraid of a stage 5 mystic immortal? One of the guardians said in a low voice. At this moment, Wei Shan seemed to have noticed something. Suddenly his expression changed and he exclaimed, No, he is not a stage 5 mystic immortal, but a stage 6 mystic immortal. What? That's impossible. The 2 enforcers, including Chen Xinyang, were astonished. They could hardly believe their eyes. Chen Xinyang swallowed and said, How is that possible? 60 years ago, when I first met him, he was only a stage 4 mystic immortal. 50 years ago, he was only a stage 5 mystic immortal. Now he has cultivated to stage 6 mystic yin? The other 2 protectors released their spirit consciousnesses hurriedly and scanned Su Zimo as well. As expected, a stage 6 mystic immortal. Get out of my way. Don't stop me. Chen Xinyang did not dare to stay here. He waved his spear and rode his mount. He charged through the crowd and ran wildly toward Zuyingu. A Zuyinga cultivator accidentally blocked his way. Chen Xinyang did not even think about it. He stabbed the cultivator to death with his spear and rushed over. Our cultivation is still higher than his. What is there to be afraid of? That's right. Today, I want to see what kind of superhuman abilities this Su Zimo has. The 2 guardians shouted and leaped up. They attacked at the same time and unleashed their divine abilities and secret techniques. Their understanding of Su Zimo was merely based on some of the rumors that had been passed down. Therefore, their fear of Su Zimo was not as strong as Chen Xuanyang's. Zuyinga army, listen to my command. Attack with all your might and kill this man. Wei Shan took a deep breath and waved his hand to give the order. He knew very well that he could not retreat now. If he fled like Chen Xinyang, the remaining Zuyinga army would be reduced to a pile of loose sand. With Su Zimo's speed, he could not escape at all. Only by fighting to the death could they have a chance to survive. As long as they could hold Su Zimo back, they could buy as much time as possible even if they had to sacrifice their lives. When Chen Xinyang brought the news back to Zuyingu, the Valley Master would come personally and kill this man. However, Su Zimo was too fast. Before the Zuyinga army could react, the golden wings on his back flapped, and he flew over their heads in an instant. At this time, the 2 Zuyinga guardians' divine abilities and secret techniques had been formed and were about to envelop Su Zimo. After all, the 2 of them were stage 7 mystic immortals. The 2 guardians reacted quickly and blocked Su Zimo's escape route in advance. Wei Shan also formed a divine ability with one hand and threw out a bronze seal with the other. The seal smashed towards Su Zimo's head. Oomph! Su Zimo snorted and ignored the incoming divine ability and Dharma treasures. He activated his primordial spirit and used the secret technique of the dragons on the bronze square cauldron. 9 true dragon flashes. Swoosh! Su Zimo's body flashed and disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he had already passed by the 3 protectors and was now behind them. Chen Xinyang, give me your life. Su Zimo stared at Chen Xuanyang's back and shouted. Su Zimo used his primordial spirit and roared with the roar of the dragon and phoenix. The forbidden suppression descended. Chen Xuanyang's steed whinnied and fell to the ground, trembling in fear as it defecated and urinated. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1864. Caught off guard, Chen Xinyang was sent flying from his mount. His reaction was extremely fast as well. Twisting his body as much as he could in midair, he stabilized himself and landed on the ground in a staggering manner. Just as he was about to continue fleeing, he heard a whooshing sound behind him. A gust of wind was approaching rapidly. The wings behind Su Zimo flapped, and he transformed into a golden beam of light that traveled thousands of kilometers in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, Chen Xianyang had already caught up to Chen Xianyang from behind. Chen Xianyang was horrified. He had already realized that there was no way he could escape. Fellow Taoist Su, as long as you're willing to let me off, I'll write off all the grudges between you and Zuyangu. He turned around and pleaded. I, Chen Xianyang, swear that I'll never cause trouble for you again in the future. If I let you off today, who's going to pay for the deaths of the cultivators of Wind Snow Ridge? Su Zimo's expression was cold and he was unmoved. He reached out and slapped Chen Xuanyang's head viciously. There was no way Chen Xianyang would resign himself to death. He growled deeply and wielded his spear with a single arm. Channeling his blood qi, he stabbed upwards, wanting to knock Su Zimo down from midair. To Chen Xianyang, as long as he could delay for a moment, he would have a chance of survival once everyone from Wei Shan arrived. Unfortunately, his opponent was Su Zimo. Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly as he reached out and grabbed the tip of the spear in a flash. Bursting with his physical strength, he pressed down. A cracking sound rang in Chen Xuanyang's ears like a bolt out of the blue. Su Zimo had snapped the spear in half. The webbing between Chen Xuanyang's thumb and index finger was torn and dripping with blood. He couldn't hold on to the remaining half of the spear, and it flew out of his hand. Su Zimo grabbed the remaining half of the spear and descended from the sky. He aimed at Chen Xuanyang's head and stabbed downwards. Puchi! Half of the spear had pierced through Chen Xuanyang's head, piercing through his sea of consciousness and brain. Chen Xuanyang's eyes were wide open. His gaze was dull, and his face was still filled with fear. With a plop, Chen Xianyang died on the spot. The exchange between the two of them happened in the blink of an eye. Chen Xuanyang's counterattack did not pose any threat to Su Zimo. Instead, he was killed on the spot. Before the three Dharma protectors of Zuyangu could recover from the strange scene of Su Zimo disappearing before their eyes, Chen Xianyang had already died. Young master. Wei Shan looked at Chen Xianyang, who was lying in a pool of blood, with a complicated expression. To a certain extent, Chen Xuanyang's intuition was right this time. The first person Su Zimo wanted to kill was him. However, even if he knew, he could not escape and was the first to die. The Zuyangu army also fell into a temporary silence. Just now, Chen Xianyang was still in high spirits and commanding the three armies. But now Chen Xianyang was a corpse. Wei Shan took a deep breath and said slowly, Fellow Taoists of Zuyangu, listen up. We want to avenge our young master. We will not allow the dignity of Zuyangu to be challenged like this. Wei Shan's words caused many Zuyangu cultivators to recover from their shock. Kill them. Another Zuyangu Dharma protector raised his arm and shouted, taking the lead and charging forward. The Zuyangu army also swarmed over with a torrential aura. Swoosh, 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 boom, boom, boom. In an instant, countless Dharma treasures tore through the air. As far as the eye could see, they were densely packed and covered the sky like locusts. Immortal skills and mystical abilities also shone resplendently in midair, causing the sky to change color and sand to fly everywhere. When the surviving cultivators of Wind Snow Ridge saw this scene, they were all worried. One had to know that when they attacked Wind Snow Ridge, Zuyangu only sent 10,000 troops to fight. Even so, Wind Snow Ridge did not last long before they were completely defeated. Right now, there was a total of 20,000 troops, and these 20,000 troops only had to deal with one person. Even if the 20,000 troops of Zuyangu did nothing and just charged over, they would probably be able to trample the weak-looking Su Zimo to death. Right? Su Zimo did not release the Kacharati Dao fire. This was Wind Snow Ridge. Not far away, there were many surviving cultivators of Wind Snow Ridge. If he released the Kacharati Dao fire, he would be able to severely injure the Zuyangu army. However, he would also be able to injure the cultivators of Wind Snow Ridge. Wind Snow Ridge would also be burned into ruins. Against the endless Dharma treasures and mystical abilities, Su Zimo's figure rose into the air slowly. He waved his hands in front of him and drew a series of mysterious trajectories. Spirit Turtle Shield Condense. Su Zimo hollered softly and channeled his innate mystical ability. In front of him, a gigantic ancient turtle shell appeared. There were curved ravines carved on the turtle shell that shone with a divine light in a bedazzling manner. Clang, clang, clang. Many Dharma treasures collided against the ancient turtle shell, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. A single Dharma treasure could not affect the Spirit Turtle Shield at all. However, when the tens of thousands of Dharma treasures swarmed over, they formed an unimaginable power. Against such an impact, the divine light on the Spirit Turtle Shield flickered. At the same time, many immortal skills and mystical abilities descended at the same time. Boom! Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted from the Spirit Turtle Shield. The divine light on the turtle shell finally dimmed against the repeated bombardment of the immortal skills and mystical abilities. Crack! 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 Cracking sounds could be heard from the turtle shell. Immediately after, right in front of everyone, the Spirit Turtle Shield shattered into pieces. When Wei Shan saw that, he was invigorated and shouted, "That's all there is to that person. Fellow Taoists, as long as we join forces, we'll definitely be able to kill him." The moment he said that, Wei Shan felt his heart skip a beat. The turtle shell exploded, and the dust dispersed. Su Zimo stood in midair and conjured sword seals with both hands. Endless killing intent emanated from his body, as though it could shake the world and turn the firmaments upside down. One after another, gigantic stars appeared in the skies. However, those stars were attracted by some unknown power, and their trajectories were chaotic as they crushed one another. The ground trembled as well, as though some peerless ferocious spirit was about to break out of the ground. When the heavens release their killing intent, the stars shift. When the earth releases its killing intent, dragons and serpents rise. Slay! Su Zimo waved his hands and slashed forward with his sword. Chi! 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 Instantly, countless sword chi spewed out from his right hand's sword fingers. It was white and bedazzling as it tore through the air with torrential killing intent. Roar! Pst! On the other side, Su Zimo's left hand's sword fingers slashed out with dragons and serpents. Above the firmaments, a divine dragon swooped down and slaughtered its way into the crowd. Everywhere it passed, people were thrown off their feet. A gigantic crack appeared in the ground as a scarlet behemoth charged out from the crack. Bathed in boiling lava, it flapped its wings and roared into the skies. Heaven-slaying sword chi rampaged and reaped lives. Earth-slaying sword chi condensed into dragons and serpents that slaughtered living beings. At that moment, the two sword arts revealed a terrifying killing power. Remember the mobile version of the website. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Terrifying Killing Intent. Page 1/1. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1865. Sword chi hummed as killing intent swept through the battlefield. The two great sword arts reproduced the scene of destruction. Actually, no matter how powerful the two great sword arts were, Su Zimo was only one person, and his cultivation realm was not enough to suppress them. As long as the 20,000 Zuyingo army attacked together, they would definitely be able to neutralize the two great sword arts and reduce the casualties to the minimum. However, the dragon snake rushed into the army and scattered the 20,000 Zuyingo army, causing them to fight on their own. The heaven-slaying sword chi descended from the sky and caused an extremely terrifying massacre to the Zuyingo cultivators. Under the heaven-slaying sword chi and the earth-slaying dragon snake, the Stage 4 and Stage 5 mystic immortals in the Zuyingo army could not withstand it at all. A single heaven-slaying sword chi could even penetrate two Tier 4 cultivators before dissipating from the body of a Tier 5 mystic immortal. Under the watchful eyes of the people from Wind Snow Ridge, the people on the battlefield fell one by one like wheat being harvested. Wei Shan and the other two also attacked, penetrating the dragon snake and blocking a lot of heaven-slaying sword chi before charging towards Su Zimo. The three of them knew that only by killing Su Zimo, as soon as possible, would they be able to neutralize the killing power of the terrifying sword chi. Kill! Wei Shan and the other two roared as they charged toward him. The protector on the left was holding a long sword that was trembling like a snake flicking its tongue. Sword Chi whistled. He was a sword cultivator. The protector on the right did not go forward. He stood not far away and controlled a flying sword with one hand and a divine power with the other, attacking Su Zimo. Wei Shan held a saber in his right hand and a bronze seal in his left hand as he faced Su Zimo. Su Zimo was facing the siege of 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals with a fearful expression. Back in Dragon Lake City, he was only a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal and was attacked by 5 or 6 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals. He had already killed them all. Now that his cultivation had broken through and his strength had increased, he no longer needed to use any divine powers or secret techniques to deal with the siege of 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals. Su Zimo's forehead flickered. With a thought, a bronze square cauldron flew out and smashed into the sword cultivator on the left. In all fairness, this sword cultivator's swordsmanship was quite exquisite. But no matter how good your swordsmanship is, you can still break it with brute force. The sword cultivator held a long sword in his hand. The sword radiance flickered in and out. It was both real and fake. However, the bronze square cauldron's aura was astonishing. It was as if it was going to smash a hole in the sky. Clang! The bronze square tripod collided with the long sword. The sword cultivator shuddered and his gaze froze. Ka. Clear cracks had already appeared on the body of the sword. Then, the long sword exploded with a bang. Countless fragments of the long sword flew back, under the tremendous force of the bronze square cauldron. This sword cultivator was so close that there was no way to dodge. More than half of the sword fragments had entered his body. In the blink of an eye, the sword cultivator was riddled with holes by his own sword. He slumped to the ground weakly, no longer able to live. Su Zimo took out the bronze square cauldron and did not look at the sword cultivator. He had long expected this to happen. He waved his sleeves and suddenly, a handful of yellow sand flew out. It was Qingmian's utmost treasure, the 9 heavens living soil. The yellow sand shone with a golden light and formed a barrier, blocking the other protector's flying sword and divine powers. At the same time, the yellow sand moved with the wind and engulfed the protector, as though it had a mind of its own. Ah! The person exclaimed and wanted to retreat. However, the yellow sand was even faster. It circled around him and engulfed him in a single breath. The yellow sand surged and squeezed against each other. Every single grain of yellow sand released an extremely terrifying power that acted on the protector. Poof! Instantly, the protector's essence spirit was destroyed by the yellow sand, and he turned into a blood mist. The yellow sand continued to shine with a golden light without a single trace of blood. It was mystical. By the time Wei Shan arrived with his gigantic seal and saber, the 2 Zuyinga protectors were already dead. Wei Shan's expression was shocked. Although he had long heard of the battle in Dragon Lake City 50 years ago, he could not have imagined that Su Zimo's methods would be so terrifying and domineering. Wei Shan's heart skipped a beat the moment his gaze met with Su Zimo's. Oh no! Wei Shan knew that something was amiss, but he still tried his best to compose himself. Gripping his saber tightly, he slashed down viciously at Su Zimo's face. When this saber slashed down, it actually swept up numerous swift and fierce wind blades. That was a superior yellow-grade saber technique, Windbreaker Saber. When released at full strength, it would produce endless wind blades with immense lethality. Freeze! Su Zimo had a calm expression as he opened his mouth and spat out a single word. Wei Shan's body trembled as he felt a strange force suddenly descend upon him. He could not move at all. In the blink of an eye, the countless blades collapsed. Wei Shan's blood chi surged, and he let out a deep roar from the depths of his throat. He channeled his essence spirit furiously and broke free from that power. However, at the same time his vision darkened. "You're dead." Those 2 words rang in Wei Shan's ears. The next moment, he felt a sharp pain in his head as his essence spirit shattered, and he died on the spot. With the help of the fixed body art, Su Zimo was able to kill Wei Shan with ease. The 3 level 7 mystic immortals of Zuyinga were all dead. On the battlefield, even with the 2 shocking sword arts, heavenly slaying and earthly slaying, there was no way they could kill an entire army of 20,000. Su Zimo stood in midair with a cold expression, as he channeled his essence spirit once more to conjure a divine power. He extended his finger and pointed ahead. Boom! Above the firmament, a thick and huge gray stone pillar broke through the clouds and descended from the sky. A lifelike divine dragon coiled around the stone pillar. It was an innate divine power, the ancestral dragon divine pillar. Boom! The ancestral dragon divine pillar fell into the crowd and crushed more than 10 Xianga cultivators, who could not dodge in time. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved, and the thick ancestral dragon divine pillar fell towards the crowd. Many cultivators were shocked and retreated one after another. Immediately after, under Su Zimo's control, the ancestral dragon divine pillar burst forth with a torrential aura and crushed towards the crowd. It was an extremely shocking scene. It was as though a supreme deity was rolling the stone pillar and crushing the fleeing ants on the ground mercilessly. The Xianga cultivators fled frantically. However, there were still many cultivators who could not dodge the rolling ancestral dragon divine pillar and were crushed into a pile of blood, their bodies and essence spirits destroyed. Su Zimo, you killed so many people from Xiangu. The Valley Master will definitely tear you into pieces. A Blood Sun Valley cultivator had a crazed look on his face as he screamed hysterically. Poof! The ancestral dragon divine pillar crushed over, and the cultivator's body exploded instantly. Even the army of 20,000 Xiangu could not withstand Su Zimo's attack. At this moment, the ground began to shake irregularly, and dust billowed in the distance. It was as though a huge army was rushing towards this place. The expressions of everyone from Feng Shuling changed. Could it be that Xiangu's reinforcements have arrived? On the other hand, everyone from Xiangu was invigorated. Su Zimo, you're finished. The Valley Master is here personally with his army. Prepare to die. The Xianga cultivator looked into the distance with anticipation. Not long after, a towering giant appeared on the horizon in the distance, striding toward this place. Behind him, there were countless demon beasts that were charging towards this place with a ferocious momentum and murderous intent. What is that? Many of the Blood Sun Valley cultivators were shocked and at a loss. Chapter 1866. The giant's body was shimmering with silver light, as if it was made of molten steel. Its face was ferocious, and its eyes were without a nose. It opened its mouth wide and let out a deafening roar. It's a giant. It looks like a silver giant. What are these demonic beasts trying to do? There were less than 10,000 cultivators left in Xiangu. There were tens of thousands of demonic beasts charging at them. Dust billowed, and their momentum was terrifying. It was as if they were going to swallow them whole. Look, there are cultivators sitting on some of the demonic beasts. A Blood Sun Valley cultivator's eyes widened as he cried out in surprise. Everyone hurriedly focused their gazes. It was as expected. Among the tens of thousands of demonic beasts, there were more than 1,000 human cultivators. All of them were murderous, and their leader was a level 7 mystic immortal. Roar! The silver giant strode forward and stretched out its thick arms. It grabbed a towering ancient tree beside it and let out a loud roar. The towering ancient tree was pulled out of the ground by the silver giant. The Xianga cultivators were dumbfounded at the sight of such shocking divine power. Their faces turned pale. The silver giant carried the towering ancient tree and slashed at the ancient tree with its arms, breaking all the branches on the ancient tree. In the blink of an eye, the towering ancient tree became a thick wooden stick in the hands of the silver giant. The silver giant soared into the sky, grabbed the ancient tree with both hands, and smashed it into the Xianga army on the battlefield. Boom! There was a loud crash. The silver giant smashed at least dozens of Xianga cultivators to death. Roar, roar, roar! The silver giant was excited. Using its shocking divine power, it held the towering ancient tree with both hands and swung it around the crowd. The Xianga cultivators could not withstand it at all. The demonic beast army behind the silver giant also charged forward. Ying Zhao, with a human face and a horse body, rampaged through the crowd. The cultivators who were trampled were either killed or seriously injured. The giant wasp flapped its wings and flew, emitting a buzzing sound that made people's hearts palpitate. The huge poisonous needle on its tail could actually leave the wasp's tail and move freely among the crowd. Even if they were grazed by the poisonous needles, the Zuyanga cultivators' bodies began to bubble with blood and smoke. Soon, they turned into puddles of pus, their souls and bodies destroyed. The nine-headed bird raised its head to the sky and let out a long cry as it passed through the crowd. Its 9 heads swayed and opened their mouths at the same time, swallowing 9 Zuyanga cultivators in one go. The remaining Zuyanga cultivators had already been slaughtered by Su Zimo and were thrown into disarray. Now, with tens of thousands of demonic beasts charging at them, they were completely defeated, and there were countless casualties. Everyone from Wind Snow Ridge was shocked. They were still unable to understand why those monstrous beasts, powerful creatures like the Silver Giant, would rush over to help Feng Shuiling. The remaining Zuyanga cultivators had no more strength to fight, and could only flee in panic. However, their remaining warhorses were all paralyzed by the auras of those powerful ferocious beasts and terrifying living beings. Given the speed of the Zuyanga cultivators, there was no way they could escape from the pursuit of so many demon beasts. Some of the demon beasts were bloodthirsty, and even charged towards Xia Qingying, and the others with murderous intent. In the eyes of those demon beasts, Zuyingu and Wind Snow Ridge were nothing. In the eyes of the demons, those cultivators were food that they could devour. Don't. Right then, a figure riding on a yellow dog sprinted over and stopped many demon beasts, shouting, "They're on our side, don't kill them." Fatty Duan. Someone in Wind Snow Ridge recognized the figure on the yellow dog and exclaimed softly. Xia Qingying focused her gaze. That was Duan Tianliang, who was brought away by Su Zimo from Wind Snow Ridge. After 60 years, Duan Tianliang had already cultivated to level 3 Mystic Essence Realm. Although many demon beasts recognized Duan Tianliang and knew that he was someone who followed Su Zimo, they did not care about his orders. Some demon beasts stopped in time and retracted their killing intent. However, some demon beasts did not care and charged past Duan Tianliang towards Xia Qingying and the others. Swash! Right then, a blinding saber beam descended from the skies and slashed down, as though it wanted to slice the world into two. Boom! There was a deafening sound. In the blink of an eye, the demon beasts that charged towards Wind Snow Ridge were severed at the waist by the blazing saber beam, and blood gushed out. The saber beam was so terrifying that it even created a gigantic ravine on the ground that was dyed red with blood. The corpses of the demon beasts that were severed at the waist almost filled the entire ravine, and it was a shocking sight. Those demon beasts were killed by that single slash before they could even touch Xia Qingying and the others. The demons were shocked. Some of the demon beasts that had not charged forward hurriedly stopped in their tracks. That was the terrifying saber beam that Su Zimo released after killing Wei Shan and snatching the saber from his hands. Su Zimo flew over with a cold expression. Although the demon beast army was strong, it was not easy to control them. Once they started fighting and saw blood, they would easily fall into a frenzy. Su Zimo's slash calmed the demons down instantly. The ravine that was filled with demon beasts' corpses was also a warning to the remaining demons. Anyone who dared to cross that line would be killed without mercy. The demons understood Su Zimo's intentions and turned around, charging towards the remaining Zuyanga cultivators. There was no suspense in this battle anymore. Under the encirclement of tens of thousands of demon beasts, not many of the remaining Zuyanga cultivators could escape alive. Su Zimo descended from midair and arrived in front of Xia Qingying and the others. Xia Qingying looked at Su Zimo and forced a smile. "You're here." She should have thanked him and felt grateful. However, at that moment, she hugged her father's corpse that was gradually turning cold. Her heart was filled with grief and despair, and she truly did not want to say anything. Su Zimo looked at Xia Qingying and sighed gently. He had never met the territorial lord of Snow Ridge. To think that the territorial lord was already dead when he met him today. "Brother Su, I knew that you'd definitely come." Right then, a weak voice sounded from not far away. Su Zimo looked over and saw a man covered in blood sitting weakly on the ground. His face was ashen, and his gaze was murky. His life aura was weak, and he was already at the end of his life. Old Yen. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he hurried forward. He took out a few elixirs from his storage bag and stuffed them into Old Yan's mouth. However, the elixirs fell out the moment they entered his mouth. Old Yen panted slightly and did not even have the strength to swallow the elixirs. Brother Su, I can't do it anymore. Old Yan's mouth twitched as though he wanted to laugh. It's not too bad to be able to see you one last time before I die. As though he thought of something, Old Yen suddenly grabbed Su Zimo's wrist. Brother Su, just now, I got separated from my child during the battle. I'm worried about him and hope that you can help me find him. End of chapter. Chapter 1867. Su Zimo did not have a deep relationship with Lao Yen. To him, Lao Yen was only the first person he befriended when he first arrived in the upper world. However, for some reason, Su Zimo felt a sense of sadness when he saw Old Yan's death. This was because he saw in Lao Yen the destination of the vast majority of ascenders. Lao Yen was the epitome of these ascenders from the lower world. Through Lao Yen, Su Zimo seemed to see everything that many of his old friends in Tianhuang mainland would experience after ascending to the upper world. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Su Zimo felt a little suffocated in his chest, as if there was a breath of air that he had nowhere to vent. How did this happen? Su Zimo asked. Why did Zuyingu attack Feng Shuiling? 50 years ago, Zuyingu was defeated in the 100,000 mountains, and its reputation fell to the bottom. There were many forces in the vicinity that wanted to break away from Zuyingu's control, Xia Qingying said. After that, Blood Sun Valley sent an army to suppress these forces mercilessly. Feng Shuiling did not have a direct conflict with Zuyingu. Father only gave the order to temporarily stop going to Zuyingu to exchange for essence condensation pills. Instead, he saved the immortal herbs that he harvested and made plans after the situation stabilized. Xia Qingying laughed bitterly and said, It was such a decision that angered Chen Xianyang, and he sent an army of 20,000. It was only then that Su Zimo stood up slowly. With a cold gaze, he sprinted towards the distance with a terrifying aura. Boss, where are you going? Duan Tianliang asked hurriedly. Zuyingu. After Su Zimo said those 3 words, a pair of huge golden wings condensed behind him. With a flap of his wings, he turned into a golden light and disappeared from everyone's sight. Xia Qingying suddenly reacted and said hurriedly, No. The Valley Master of Zuyingu is an 8th-stage mystic immortal. There should be an army of tens of thousands of cultivators in Zuyingu. Fellow Taoist Su, you can't go there alone. By the time Xia Qingying finished speaking, Su Zimo had already disappeared. Duan Tianliang, hurry up and bring people to Zuyingu to help fellow Taoist Su. Xia Qingying took a deep breath and tried her best to break free from her grief. She said in a low voice, We are no longer in any danger here. We can't let fellow Taoist Su face the entire Zuyingu alone. Duan Tianliang nodded and went straight to Yu Hao. Brother Yu, bring the Yang extermination camp's men, and we will go to Zuyingu together. Boss has already gone there. Duan Tianliang said. Just leave the snow wind ridge to these demonic beasts. With the silver giant, the giant bee, and the 9-headed bird, these demonic beasts won't cause any trouble. All right. Yu Hao's eyes shone with murderous intent. He said in a low voice, Brothers of Yang extermination camp, listen up. Today, we will kill our way to Zuyingu and avenge our dead relatives. Kill our way to Zuyingu. More than 1,000 Yang extermination camp cultivators roared loudly. Let's go. Yu Hao waved his hand, and everyone sped in the direction of Zuyingu. Zuyingu. Young Master and the others should be back soon, right? That's not necessarily true. After Young Master exterminates the Wind Snow Ridge and captures the young miss of the Wind Snow Ridge, he might even spend a night in the Wind Snow Ridge and have sex with her, hee. The guards at the door had nothing to do, so they gathered together and laughed. Young Master has been eyeing that little girl for some years. He was still willing to put on an act and save the damsel in distress. One of them laughed. This time, our young master has finally thought it through. No matter what, let's snatch that little girl first. What's that over there? Another guard looked into the distance and frowned slightly. In the distant sky, There was a golden light approaching at an alarming speed. Many of the Blood Sun Valley's guards were shocked. They quickly spread out and were on high alert. One of the guards even took out a messaging talisman from his storage bag and held it in his palm, tensing up. In a few breaths, the golden light had already arrived. A figure appeared and stood in the air. He had black hair and a green robe, and his expression was cold. "Who's that?" One of the Zuyinga guards shouted. "This person looks familiar." Another guard was deep in thought. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed drastically. He cried out, "Su Zimo! He's Su Zimo!" As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zimo had already stepped into the air and walked over. As he walked, he flicked his fingertips lightly. Streaks of sharp sword chi burst out and sank into the guards' glabella. These guards were only stage 5 mystic immortals and could not withstand it at all. When Su Zimo walked past them, they fell to the ground and were already dead. However, one of the Zuyinga guards had already shattered the talisman in his palm before he died. Enemy attack! A sharp shout came from Zuyingu. In an instant, many cultivators woke up from their meditation and walked out of their cave abodes. Their bodies emitted powerful auras as they wanted to find out what was going on. In midair, a golden light streaked across the sky and sped towards the depths of Zuyingu. Many Zuyinga cultivators could not even see what the golden light was. "Stop it!" One of them shouted loudly. Whoosh! Whoosh! Boom! Boom! Numerous Dharma treasures fell like rain. Divine abilities and immortal spells poured down and completely sealed off Su Zimo's path. "You're courting death." The golden light paused and revealed Su Zimo's figure. "It's him! Su Zimo!" Many cultivators recognized Su Zimo and exclaimed. They saw 3 balls of scorching flames revolving around Su Zimo. The heat wave was oppressive, and the cultivators did not dare to approach. He waved his hands, and the 3 balls of flames condensed into one. It was only at this moment that the Zuyinga cultivators recalled the legends of the battle at Dragon Lake City 50 years ago. Condense! Su Zimo shot out the Samadhi Dao fire. At the same time, his essence spirit burst forth with a fiery light that entered the Samadhi Dao fire. The flames burned brightly. The Kacharati Dao fire descended and spread rapidly, showing signs of engulfing the entire Zuyingu. A sun had truly fallen in Zuyingu. Many cultivators could not dodge in time and fell into the sea of fire. They could not escape at all and were burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. Countless cultivators struggled, fled and screamed in the sea of fire. Those cultivators could barely take care of themselves. None of them could care about Su Zimo, who was in midair. Su Zimo's gaze was like a torch that could penetrate the voids and land on a majestic palace in the depths of Zuyingu. The moment he entered Zuyingu, he could sense an extremely powerful aura emanating from the palace. It was the Zuyinga Valley Master. In a flash, Su Zimo passed through the sea of fire and the crowd and arrived before the palace. Without stopping, he slammed open the palace doors and barged in. A figure sat upright in the middle of the hall expressionlessly and glared at Su Zimo, who had barged in. Chapter 1868. Su Zimo. The Zuyinga Valley Master stared at the figure at the entrance of the palace with a fierce expression. Although the two of them had never met before, he could immediately guess that the black-haired, green-robed cultivator in front of him was Su Zimo, who had been making a name for himself on the Dragon Abyss planet in recent years. Their gazes collided in midair, opposing each other with equal harshness. A terrifying aura emanated from the Zuyinga Valley Master's body as he asked slowly, "Is my son Xianyang still alive?" "I've already killed him," Su Zimo said coldly. "Don't worry, I'll send you and your son down to reunite immediately." Hee. The Zuyinga Valley Master laughed and said, Good, good, good. It's been so many years since anyone dared to speak to me like this. I didn't expect to be threatened by a junior who has only ascended for less than 100 years. The Zuyinga Valley Master stood up slowly and said coldly, "Su Zimo, with your talent and aptitude, if you're willing to lay low and cultivate to stage 8 Mystic Immortal, I'm afraid no one on the Dragon Abyss planet will be able to suppress you. However, you're still too young and too powerful. You're only at stage 6 Mystic Immortal Realm, and you dare to come to Zuyingu and challenge me. Today, I want you to pay with your life for my son." As soon as he finished speaking, the Zuyinga Valley master slapped his storage bag and took out a huge halberd. As he injected his primordial chi into the halberd vibrated and 5 runes flashed. This halberd was actually a mystic-grade perfect Dharma treasure. Su Zimo was fearless as he strode towards the Zuyinga Valley master. His glabella shone and a bronze square cauldron appeared and floated above his head. "Kill!" The Zuyinga Valley master leaped and held the halberd with both hands. He descended from the sky and slashed down heavily towards the approaching Su Zimo. "Kill!" Su Zimo shouted at the same time. However, the word kill contained a powerful sound domain secret technique. It was like a thunderclap that reverberated in the palace, deafening everyone. The master of Zuyinga Valley trembled. However, his blood chi surged and instantly suppressed the effects of thunderclap kill. Break! The valley master of Zuyinga Valley looked at the broken bronze square cauldron, hanging above Su Zimo's head with a stern gaze. His strength increased again. As far as he was concerned, the cauldron had already shattered to such an extent. So long as he struck with his full strength, he would definitely be able to blast the cauldron into pieces. Clang! The halberd landed on the bronze square cauldron, and sparks flew everywhere. The bronze square cauldron remained motionless. On the other hand, the Zuyinga Valley master felt a strong rebounding force. His entire arm was numb from the shock. Su Zimo's divine sense moved. The bronze square cauldron flew across the void without stopping and crashed toward the Zuyinga Valley master. Clang! There was another deafening sound. The valley master of Zuyinga Valley swept his halberd horizontally and blocked the bronze square cauldron. However, he was forced to descend from midair. Swash! Su Zimo strode forward and transformed into a green shadow. His blood chi surged with the sound of a tsunami. He was bent on killing the master of Zuyinga Valley today, and did not care if Qinglian's bloodline was exposed. Su Zimo closed in on the master of Zuyinga Valley rapidly, and slapped the latter's head with a flip of his palm. This palm strike was like an enormous millstone, and it emitted a powerful crushing and obliterating force. Great Chaos Essence Palm. The master of Zuyinga Valley raised his halberd and blocked once more. Bang! Su Zimo's palm landed on the halberd, and the entire halberd trembled slightly. The master of Zuyinga Valley master was shocked. He had long heard of Su Zimo's combat strength. His physique was strong, and he had many divine powers and secret skills. However, it was only until today's fight that he realized how terrifying Su Zimo's melee combat strength was. He almost knocked the halberd out of his hands with his physical body. There was a difference of 2 minor cultivation realms between the two of them. However, that difference was completely erased against Qinglian's true body, with surging blood chi. Not only that, almost the moment the two of them exchanged blows, the master of Zuyinga Valley master was already at a disadvantage, and could not turn the situation around. Su Zimo controlled the bronze square cauldron with his spirit consciousness, and suppressed the master of Zuyinga continuously, while fighting in melee combat. With a single halberd, the master of Zuyinga Valley master could not withstand at all, and was forced to retreat. Snap! Su Zimo seized the opportunity, and punched the chest of the master of Zuyinga Valley master, shattering the heart protection mirror on his chest instantly. Buzz! After the heart protection mirror shattered, it burst forth with a powerful halo that repelled Su Zimo. The master of Zuyinga Valley master retreated hurriedly, and took the opportunity to catch his breath with a grim expression. The two of them exchanged blows for dozens of breaths. However, under Su Zimo's powerful attacks, he was already drenched in sweat, and his entire body was sore. Although he had withstood those rounds, he had expended too much of his energy. On the other hand, Su Zimo was still breathing steadily, and his face was flushed after the fight. There was no sign of fatigue at all. The master of Zuyinga Valley master realized that if the fight continued, he would definitely be killed by Su Zimo. Just now, he had the heart protection mirror that saved his life. The next time around, there wouldn't be any treasure that could defend against Su Zimo's attack. A hint of madness flashed through the eyes of the master of Zuyinga Valley master. His expression was ferocious, as though he had made an extremely important decision. Maniac mystic skill. The master of Zuyinga Valley master channeled his essence spirit and channeled his mystic skill. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a gigantic vortex that devoured heaven-earth yuan qi wildly. His aura and power within his body rose rapidly within a short period of time. To begin with, the master of Zuyinga Valley was at the peak of Mystic Essence Realm Level 8. Right now, his strength was rising continuously without any signs of stopping. In a short period of time, he had already broken through to Mystic Essence Realm Level 9. Su Zimo frowned slightly. In the cultivation world, there were indeed some cultivation techniques and secret skills that could forcefully raise one's strength. However, a mystic skill that could allow one to break through a cultivation realm was extremely rare. Ha 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 ha. The master of Zuyinga Valley Master was filled with rich heaven-earth yuan qi. Sensing the immense power within his body, he reared his head in laughter. Su Zimo, this is a mystic skill that I obtained by chance. This is my trump card. Prepare to die. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and sensed for a moment. Suddenly he sneered. The drawback of this mystic skill is way too obvious. While the master of Zuyinga Valley Master's strength was rising, his lifespan was decreasing rapidly as well. Initially, he was a middle-aged man with a head of black hair. However, in the span of a few breaths, his hair had turned white and his face was filled with wrinkles. By the looks of it, the master of Zuyinga Valley Master's lifespan was less than 10,000 years. A mystic immortal had a lifespan of 100,000 years. If he was less than 10,000 years old, it meant that he was already in his twilight years. It was also because he had sacrificed a large amount of his lifespan that the master of Zuyinga Valley Master was able to forcefully raise his cultivation realm and obtain immense power for a short period of time. Even if he could kill Su Zimo today, he would never be able to recover the lifespan he had lost. End of chapter. Chapter 1869. The Zuyinga Valley Master was well aware of the consequences of using the Mad Demon Mystic technique. However, he had no other choice. If he did not use this mystic technique, he would die for sure. Although his lifespan would decrease rapidly if he used the mystic technique, he could raise his cultivation level to Mystic Aeon Realm Level 9 and kill Su Zimo. The Zuyinga Valley Master was confident of this. He believed that no matter how monstrous this young man was, or how many trump cards he had, he would not be able to close the gap of 3 realms. Su Zimo was calm. If he was in the lower realm, he could use Baron to deplete the Zuyinga Valley Master's remaining lifespan in a few breaths. However, after ascending to the upper realm, Baron could not fuse perfectly with the heaven and earth yuan qi. Time Blade was a great mystic technique. With Su Zimo's current cultivation level, he could not use it. Therefore, even if he was facing the Zuyinga Valley Master who was past his prime, he could only fight him head-on. There were no tricks. Mystic Aeon Realm Level 9. Very good. Su Zimo nodded with a fearless expression. His eyes were like torches as he said slowly, I'm going to test the strength of a mystic immortal. Divine Six-Tusked Elephant. Su Zimo did not hesitate to use his innate mystic technique. On his back, a pair of huge white ivory tusks slowly grew out. As the tusks grew, Su Zimo's strength also increased rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it increased by more than 2 times. Oh, the Zuyinga Valley Master's heart skipped a beat, and he was shocked. After releasing that divine power, Su Zimo's aura was actually able to fight against him without backing down at all. What was even more terrifying was that this mystic technique did not have any drawbacks. Su Zimo's lifespan and blood qi did not show any signs of depletion. After releasing the divine six-tusked elephant, Su Zimo's physical strength, blood qi, and essence spirit all increased. Although he had not broken through to Mystic Aeon Realm Level 7, he was infinitely close. A six-tusked divine elephant appeared behind Su Zimo, raising its trunk and roaring into the skies. Roar! Su Zimo let out a resounding roar that shook the heavens and earth. His chi soared into the clouds, and a bronze square cauldron floated above his head. He charged towards the Valley Master of Zuyingu. Kill! The Valley Master of Zuyinga Valley gritted his teeth. His eyes were bloodshot as he stepped forward. He had no way out. Bang! 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 Clang! 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 The The two of them fiercely collided with each other. Their fists and palms intersected. The bronze square cauldron and the halberd collided. Sparks flew in all directions and waves of energy surged. With Qinglian's true body, releasing the vital energy and blood to activate the divine six-tusked elephant, Su Zimo was entirely capable of surmounting 3 minor realms and going head-on against a 9th-level mysterious immortal. In terms of strength, he was not at a disadvantage at all. On the contrary, as time passed, Su Zimo became more and more courageous. As for the Zuyinga Valley Master, he was shuddering in fear. The reason why he released a secret skill and expended his lifespan to forcefully raise his cultivation realm was so that he could suppress Su Zimo as soon as possible. However, now that the two of them were fighting once more, it was difficult to determine the victor within a short period of time. His stamina and blood chi were far inferior to Qinglian's true body. Furthermore, he was already in his twilight years. Before long, the Zuyinga Valley Master had already shed his armor. His hair was disheveled as he panted heavily, and his movements were getting slower. "Old dog, go down and reunite with your son," Su Zimo hollered as his blood chi surged and broke through the limits of the tsunami blood. Behind him, a green lotus of creation that connected the heavens and the earth appeared. The entire palace could not withstand this power, and had already begun to collapse and shake. On the verge of collapse. Bloodline phenomenon. The Zuyinga Valley Master was shocked. The Qinglian was jade green in color. Its lotus leaves were gigantic, and its stem was straight like an arrow. When the lotus bloomed, it emitted endless light that illuminated the heavens, and was incomparably mystical. "Condense the blood sun with my blood essence." The Zuyinga Valley Master gripped his halberd and slashed his wrist viciously, causing blood to spurt out. He chanted silently, and released an immortal skill. He waved his injured wrist and rotated it in front of him. Under the activation of that immortal skill, the blood in his body seemed to be pulled by something and spewed out from his wrist. The Zuyinga Valley Master's face turned pale rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he aged a few more notches. That immortal skill had expended nearly half of his bloodline. Given his twilight years, losing that much bloodline was no different from suicide. After all, the Zuyinga Valley Master was a formidable figure on Dragon Abyss planet. He was unwilling to surrender and wait for death. That was why he sacrificed so much of his bloodline to condense that blood sun. That was his final attack before his death. Regardless of whether the blood sun could kill Su Zimo or not, he would not be able to live for long. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he shook his head gently. Apart from Tianhuang mainland, the creation Qinglian had never been heard of in the other lower worlds. The Zuyinga Valley Master did not realize what he was facing at all. The creation Qinglian swayed gently, and the entire void trembled. Rumble. The majestic palace began to crumble, and countless boulders and beams fell from the sky. That single swaying motion caused a ripple to appear in the void that extended in all directions, and swept past the blood sun not far away. Crack. 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 A few cracks appeared on the blood sun instantly. The Zuyinga Valley Master's expression darkened. The next moment the blood sun shattered. Even if he expended his bloodline, he would not be able to defend against the might of the creation Qinglian. The ripples caused by the swaying of the Qinglian swept past the body of the Zuyinga Valley Master. The Zuyinga Valley Master's body stiffened, and his essence spirit was destroyed in his consciousness. He died on the spot. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved, and he put away the storage bag of the Zuyinga Valley Master. In fact, he did not even take another look at the corpse of the Zuyinga Valley Master. He waved his sleeves, and the phenomenon of the Qinglian dissipated as he turned to leave. In the blink of an eye, the Zuyinga Valley Master was buried in the palace that he built. Within Zuyinga, the garrison army suffered heavy casualties from Su Zimo's Kacharati Dao fire, and fled in all directions. Right now, the fire was gradually extinguishing. Many Zuyinga cultivators managed to hold on, until now with great difficulty. Not far away, they saw the collapse of the Valley Master's gigantic sleeping chamber, with dust billowing. Nobody witnessed the battle between Su Zimo and the Zuyinga Valley Master personally. However, they could guess how intense the battle was based on the current situation. With the Valley Master's help, Su Zimo shouldn't be able to survive. Even if Su Zimo dies, it won't be able to make up for our losses. Some of the Zuyanga cultivators who were lucky enough to survive huddled together inside. Look, that person seems to be. Right then, a Zuyanga cultivator pointed to the direction of the collapsed palace, not far away, with a trembling voice and a terrified expression. Everyone turned around. A black-haired, green-robed cultivator floated out of the rumbling dust and soared into the air. His body was spotless and his gaze was like lightning. He was like a god that had walked out of the ruins and could not be looked at directly. Everyone sleep early. End of chapter. Chapter 1870. The moment they saw Su Zimo walk out of the collapsed palace, the cultivators of Zuyanga realized that their valley master was most likely dead. Zuyanga was finished. This was a force that had been standing on Dragon Abyss planet for many years and had never been defeated despite countless storms and tribulations. No one had expected that such a huge force would suffer heavy losses in just a few decades and end up in such a state. Zuyanga was not destroyed in the fight between forces, but in the hands of a single person. If they had not experienced all of this personally, no one would have imagined that this person was just a stage 6 mystic immortal who had ascended less than 100 years ago. In Zuyanga, the remaining cultivators' psychological defenses collapsed, and they did not dare to fight against Su Zimo at all. They fled in a hurry, hating that they were born with 2 more legs. At this moment, Yu Hao and the others had already arrived in Zuyanga with more than 1,000 cultivators of Miang camp. When enemies met, their eyes would turn red. Yu Hao gave the order, and the army of Miang camp roared and charged towards the remaining cultivators of Zuyanga with a murderous aura. In fact, there were still thousands of cultivators who escaped from Zuyanga. However, these people were completely terrified by Su Zimo and did not dare to fight against the cultivators of Miang camp. They scattered and were utterly defeated. There was no longer any suspense in this battle. Yu Hao and the others were worried about Su Zimo and did not chase after him with the army. Instead, they rushed into Zuyanga. In Zuyanga, flames soared into the sky. The former overlord of Dragon Abyss planet was almost burned into ruins by the Kacharati Dao fire, and corpses were everywhere. Although there were only some remnant flames, Yu Hao and the others could feel waves of scorching pain on their skin. Everyone looked up and saw a green-robed cultivator walking in the air not far away. The surrounding flames avoided him. It was Su Zimo. "Brother Su, are you all right?" Yu Hao and the others hurried over. Su Zimo shook his head slightly. "Where is Zuyanga Valley Master?" At the mention of this person, Shun Fei clenched his fists tightly with hatred written all over his face. "Dead," Su Zimo said indifferently, although Yu Hao and the others had already vaguely guessed this outcome in their hearts. However, when they heard the answer from Su Zimo's mouth, the 3 of them still felt enlightened. The 3 of them harbored hatred in their hearts. They led the people of the Miang camp and wandered around the Longyuan star. They did not have a fixed residence. They wanted to destroy Zuyanga and kill their enemies with their own hands. However, over the years, the gap between them and Zuyanga was still unbridgeable. When the 3 of them heard this news, they actually felt that it was somewhat unreal. "Dead." Yu Hao sighed. "Zuyanga has been destroyed. People of Sky Pillar Stronghold, Wind and Cloud Gang, and Righteous Mountain Village, if you know this in the underworld, you will have no regrets." All the hatred and responsibility had been placed on this man's shoulders. All these years, he had almost been unable to breathe. He did not even dare to have a good night's sleep. He was afraid that he would encounter danger and cause the people of the Miang camp to suffer. Now, he was relieved of a heavy burden. Su Zimo looked at the blazing Zuyanga with a complicated expression. Even if he killed the Valley Master of Zuyanga and destroyed Zuyanga, he did not feel the slightest bit of joy in his heart. Those people of Wind Snow Ridge were still dead in the end. Lao Yin could not be revived either. The human emperor and Dai Yu were right. The upper realm was even more cruel and cold-blooded than the lower realm. This was only the most remote Longyuan star. If they entered the center of Dajin and came into contact with the real cultivation world of the upper realm, what would the situation be like? In 10 days, The news of Zuying's destruction had spread completely, causing an uproar among countless large and small forces. Zuying was one of the 8 major forces of Longyuan Star. One had to know that even the 3 major forces of Sky Pillar Stronghold, Wind and Cloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village had persevered for many years and suffered heavy losses before finally being destroyed. Who would have thought that Blood Sun Valley would be wiped out from Longyuan Star within a day? What exactly happened? I heard that Chen Xianyang led an army to attack Wind Snow Ridge. Just as they were about to take down Wind Snow Ridge, Su Zimo led an army to arrive and defeated Chen Xianyang. Su Zimo, it's him again. But even if Chen Xianyang was defeated, the Zuying Valley Master is a level 8 mystic immortal who has been famous for many years. How could he be defeated so badly? I heard from a cultivator who escaped from Zuying that Su Zimo killed his way to Zuying alone and faced off against the Zuying Valley Master. However, no one saw the specific situation of that battle. I'm afraid that it will forever be a mystery. This Su Zimo is really scary. Every time he appears, he will stir up a storm. With his strength and reputation, I'm afraid that he is qualified to establish a new force and replace Zuying. These days, the entire Longyuan Star was discussing this matter. 10 days later at Wind Snow Ridge, Zuying stored a large amount of cultivation resources and treasures. After Zuying was destroyed, these cultivation resources and treasures were all transferred to Wind Snow Ridge. Wind Snow Ridge also entered the stage of reconstruction. Under Xia Qingying's persuasion, Yu Hao and the others chose to stay in Wind Snow Ridge. The existence of Miang Stronghold was originally for revenge. Now that Zuying was destroyed and Miang Stronghold was integrated into Wind Snow Ridge, no one had much resistance in their hearts. Although Wind Snow Ridge had suffered heavy losses in this battle, there were countless casualties. However, with the addition of Miang Stronghold and the inheritance of Zuying's huge resources, Wind Snow Ridge's strength increased greatly. Furthermore, these days, there were many cultivators who came from the surroundings and chose to join Wind Snow Ridge. Wind Snow Ridge Hall. Su Zimo, Yu Hao, Shen Fei, Gu Wenjun, Xia Qingying, Duan Tianliang, and the others sat on both sides of the hall. At the top of the hall, the seat of the territorial lord was still empty. These days, many cultivators were busy rebuilding Wind Snow Ridge, accommodating cultivators, appeasing spirit farmers, and receiving Zuying's resources. They had not been idle. Now that Wind Snow Ridge was gradually on the right track, the seat of the territorial lord could not remain empty. In fact, everyone already had a candidate in their hearts. To everyone, only this person had the qualifications and strength to become the territorial lord of Wind Snow Ridge and command a region and intimidate everyone. Xia Qingying coughed softly and stood up slowly. I called everyone here today to confirm the candidate of the territorial lord. As soon as she said that, everyone's gazes landed on Su Zimo. Even Xia Qingying was the same. Xia Qingying smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, the seat of the territorial lord belongs to you." "I can't do it." Su Zimo shook his head and rejected with an indifferent expression. "Brother Su, only you can convince everyone with the position of the territorial lord. We have no objections," Yu Hao said hurriedly. Gu Wenjun nodded and said, "That's right, Brother Su. Almost all the cultivators who joined Wind Snow Ridge these days came because of your reputation. There's no need to mention this again." Su Zimo said, "I'll stay in Wind Snow Ridge for a period of time. However, you guys have to choose another person to be the territorial lord." According to his cultivation speed, it wouldn't be long before he left the Dragon Abyss planet. Su Zimo did not want to leave too much karma on Dragon Abyss planet. He did not want to bring unnecessary trouble to everyone in Wind Snow Ridge because of him. That's all for tonight. Everyone sleep early. End of chapter. Chapter 1871. Everyone saw Su Zimo's firm attitude and did not try to persuade him anymore. Yu Hao thought for a while and looked at Xia Qingying. Since that's the case, Qingying should be the overlord. After all, this is your territory, and you are the most familiar with this place. "I can't." Xia Qingying shook her head slightly and smiled. "My cultivation is too low, And it's not enough to convince everyone. On Long Yuan planet, not everyone was like Su Zimo, cultivating at such a terrifying speed. 60 years had passed, and Xia Qingying's cultivation was still at the 4th level of the mystic Yin realm. Xia Qingying pondered for a while and said, Brother Yu is a 7th level mystic immortal, and Mian Camp's strength is stronger than Feng Shuiling's. Other than Brother Su, I'm afraid only Brother Yu is qualified to be the overlord. Yu Hao quickly waved his hand, and was about to decline. Shen Fei could not help but say, all right. Why are the two of you declining? It's the same no matter who becomes the overlord. Sooner or later. Cough cough. Shen Fei did not continue speaking. It was obvious that there was a hidden meaning in his words, and he looked at Yu Hao and Xia Qingying with a mocking expression. Yu Hao and Xia Qingying looked at each other, and then quickly looked away. Xia Qingying's cheeks were slightly red, but she was still calm. Yu Hao, on the other hand, was blushing. He rubbed his hands, not knowing what to do. Gu Wenjun saw her brother's expression, and could not help but cover her mouth and laugh. Su Zimo saw this scene, and a look of realization flashed across his eyes. He did not expect that Yu Hao and Xia Qingying would have such fate. It was rare. Xia Qingying was kind-hearted. She had just experienced the pain of losing her father, and it was rare for her to have someone by her side. And after this period of interaction, Yu Hao was also a straightforward and righteous man. The two of them were quite compatible. Su Zimo smiled and said, since that's the case, Yu Hao will be the overlord of Feng Shuiling. If there's anything you don't understand, ask Xia Qingying. Shen Fei and the others immediately agreed. Hearing Su Zimo's words, Yu Hao did not decline anymore. He stood up and cupped his fist slightly towards Xia Qingying, bowing and saying, Xia. Fellow Taoist Xia Qingying, if there's anything wrong in the future, feel free to tell me. I'll definitely change. Xia Qingying nodded and lowered her head. It was obvious that the two of them hadn't broken through yet. They were still in that kind of hazy feeling, which was the most wonderful thing. Su Zimo smiled. He didn't linger in the hall and floated away. Shen Fei and the others also seemed to have realized something and left with laughter, leaving Yu Hao and Xia Qingying in the hall. In the following period of time, Su Zimo didn't continue cultivating. Instead, he took out the tortoiseshell he obtained from Dragon Lake City and started comprehending it. There was an array formation recorded on the tortoiseshell. The intricate patterns on the surface were actually the array patterns of the array. As time passed, Wind Snow Ridge was rebuilt and grew stronger. There were even some small forces in the surroundings that chose to join Wind Snow Ridge for protection. However, Su Zimo, Yu Hao, and the others knew that Wind Snow Ridge's crisis had not really passed. Wind Snow Ridge still faced at least two huge threats: the Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang. Back then, it was these two bandits that destroyed the Sky Pillar stronghold, the Wind Cloud Gang, and the Righteous Village. Now Wind Snow Ridge had rebuilt and destroyed Zuyanggu. These two bandits had always had an extremely close relationship with Zuyanggu, and would definitely not let this matter rest. In the following year, Wind Snow Ridge was always on high alert, and didn't dare to relax in the slightest. Perhaps because they were afraid of Su Zimo's fierce reputation, these two bandits didn't do anything in the past year. However, everyone in Wind Snow Ridge knew that these two bandits were definitely waiting for some opportunity. As long as they grasped this opportunity, these two bandits would definitely take action and launch a crazy revenge on Wind Snow Ridge. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed since Zuyanggu was destroyed. After 10 years of development, Wind Snow Ridge grew rapidly. Right now, there were more than 10,000 guards in Wind Snow Ridge alone. Although they were not as strong as Zuyanggu back then, many cultivators had already listed Wind Snow Ridge as one of the 8 major factions of Dragon Abyss Planet, because of the reputation of the battle 10 years ago. For the past 10 years, Su Zimo spent most of his time in seclusion cultivation. After breaking through to Mystic Essence Realm 6, he could clearly sense that Qinglian's true body's absorption of heaven and earth essence qi was increasing. In order to raise his cultivation realm, the number of essence gathering elixirs he needed increased exponentially, and the time it took him increased as well. In the past 10 years of cultivation, He had devoured a large number of essence-gathering elixirs. However, the increase in his cultivation was not obvious. Although Qinglian's true body was powerful, the cultivation resources it required were extremely terrifying as well. The creation Qinglian was unique in the world, and there was only one of it. Since ancient times, not many people had seen the grade 12 creation Qinglian. That was because the further one progressed, the harsher the conditions for the growth of the creation Qinglian. This day, Su Zimo sensed something, and was jolted awake from his seclusion. Su Zimo walked out of his cave abode, and looked in the direction of the wilderness with a slight frown. Boss, you're out of seclusion. For the past few years, Duan Tianliang had been guarding the entrance of Su Zimo's cave abode, and forbade anyone from approaching. It was not because he was loyal. The main reason was that the heaven and earth essence qi at the entrance of the cave abode was extremely rich, and his cultivation speed had improved by leaps and bounds as well. What happened? Duan Tianliang asked carefully when he saw Su Zimo's strange expression. Su Zimo shook his head and did not explain. Just now, he could vaguely sense an unusual energy fluctuation coming from the depths of the wilderness. It was extremely terrifying. The energy fluctuation had even surpassed the mystic essence realm. Logically speaking, a power of this level should not appear on Dragon Abyss planet. How could this be? Just as Su Zimo was pondering, a bedazzling divine radiance burst forth from the distant skies. It released endless rays of light and surged into the clouds, piercing through the firmaments and traversing the voids. This time round, most of the cultivators and living beings on Dragon Abyss planet witnessed this shocking scene, let alone Su Zimo. What kind of treasure is this? Judging from the direction, it seems to be the wilderness. Let's go and take a look. The divine radiance attracted the attention of countless cultivators, and they moved one after another, preparing to investigate and see what was going on. For many cultivators, this was an opportunity. If they could grasp it, they might be able to leave Dragon Abyss planet and make a great leap. Right then Yu Hao, Xia Qingying, and the others rushed over as well. Brother Su, what's going on? Yu Hao asked. Su Zimo shook his head. I'm not sure either. You guys guard Snow Wind Ridge. I'll go take a look. Fellow Taoist Su, you have to be careful, Xia Qingying hurriedly said. The location of this divine radiance should be in the depths of the wilderness. Cultivators that dare to go deep there are at least level 7 or 8 mystic immortals. I reckon that even the native exalted immortals of Dragon Abyss City might have gone to investigate. You must be careful and not get into conflict with them. End of this chapter. Chapter 1872. 3 days later, Su Zimo arrived at the wildlands and found the silver giant to ask for some information. It was said that there was an endless abyss in the depths of the wildlands. It was like a divine dragon that spanned more than half of the Dragon Abyss planet. The abyss was shrouded in black fog all year round and possessed extremely terrifying power. Once mystic immortals entered the black fog, their essence would be devoured, and they would turn into dried corpses. Therefore, although the abyss had existed for a long time, no one explored it. The divine radiance from 3 days ago had been emitted from this abyss. Because of this divine light, the black fog in the abyss was dispersed. All living beings could guess that there must be some treasure or opportunity in this abyss. Now that the black fog was dispersed, it was a rare opportunity. In the past 3 days, the living beings in the wildlands became restless. The 3 ferocious beasts, the giant bee, the 9-headed bird, and Ying Zhao, also headed towards the abyss to investigate. Why didn't you go? Su Zimo looked at the silver giant and asked. The silver giant was honest and said, after such a huge commotion this time, I reckon that there must be experts gathered in that abyss. There might even be experts from outside the Dragon Abyss planet. Such an opportunity will definitely not be mine. The moment he said that, Su Zimo sensed something and looked up. Outside the Dragon Abyss planet, a dark golden ray of light was rapidly approaching. Not long after, the dark golden light appeared and sped on the Dragon Abyss planet, heading towards the depths of the wildlands. Su Zimo saw clearly that the dark golden light was a gigantic ship. It was more than 100 feet long and had 7 floors. Just its appearance alone was extremely exquisite and ethereal. There were many mysterious and complicated patterns carved around the ship that emitted a divine light, forming an almost transparent barrier that enveloped the spirit ship. On the Dragon Abyss planet, due to the suppression of the laws of the upper realm, even a stage 9 mystic immortal could not reach more than 90 feet in the air. As for this ship, it traveled hundreds of feet in the air and swept past the heads of Su Zimo and the other demons, leaving a huge shadow. There were more than 10 figures standing on the spirit vessel. The cultivators swept their gazes across Su Zimo and the others below with indifferent expressions, as though they were looking at a bunch of ants. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. Looking at this situation, the silver giant was right. The divine radiance that burst forth from the abyss had already alarmed the experts outside the Dragon Abyss planet. This ship is so magnificent. Those who are standing on it must be Earth origin stage cultivators. This ship seemed to be moving slowly, but it didn't take long for it to disappear from Su Zimo's sight. Su Zimo fell into deep thought. He had heard people say that even earthly yuan cultivators couldn't travel through the starry sky. Only those who had reached the sky origin stage would have the ability to do so. Just now, he saw that the ship had many mysterious runes carved into it, forming a barrier that seemed to protect the cultivators on the ship, allowing them to freely travel through space. Even the experts outside the Dragon Abyss planet were alarmed. Even if there were any treasures in the abyss, it wouldn't be easy to obtain them. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo decided to explore the abyss. Suddenly he thought of something. It was most likely not a coincidence that he landed on this planet after escaping from the black hole in the starry sky dozens of years ago. Back then, the reason why he could escape from the black hole in the starry sky was because of the divine dragon that awakened on the outer wall of the bronze square tripod. Coincidentally, this planet was called the Dragon Abyss planet. Su Zimo continued sneaking into the depths of the wilderness. 10 days later, he had just arrived at the periphery of the abyss when he stopped in his tracks with a grim expression. He was not in a hurry to approach the abyss. Over the past few days, countless experts from outside the Dragon Abyss planet had descended here. Some of them drove ships, and every single cultivator exuded an extremely powerful aura. Compared to these experts, the mystic immortals of the Dragon Abyss planet were as weak as ants. Some of the cultivators were even more terrifying. Su Zimo witnessed with his own eyes a long-haired man in a bloodstained battle armor, driving a chariot pulled by 9 WRMS that sped over from the depths of the starry sky. The 9 WRMS were dozens of feet long and had menacing expressions as they roared. Every single one of them exuded an aura that was even more terrifying than most of the cultivators that came down from the ships. One could imagine the strength of the man on the chariot. Driving the chariot, he almost crushed the starry sky and was unstoppable. To be able to travel freely in the starry sky, he was a heaven immortal expert. Su Zimo swallowed his saliva and retracted his gaze, not daring to look for too long. Although his spirit consciousness was far superior to those of the same cultivation realm, he did not dare to probe the bodies of these cultivators. That was because he had witnessed with his own eyes a cultivator that came down from the ship, trying to probe the cultivation of the man on the chariot out of curiosity. However, the cultivator was killed on the spot by the man. A puny earth immortal dares to probe my background? You're courting death. The man on the chariot sneered. Heaven immortal Luo Yang, you're truly impressive. What's so great about killing an earth immortal? Not far away, a bewitching woman rode on a colorful cloud and floated over. She looked at the man on the chariot and giggled. He was indeed a heaven immortal. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. To think that the divine light that burst forth from the abyss of Dragon Abyss Star would attract a heaven immortal expert. Heaven immortal Luo Yang glanced at the bewitching woman with a wary expression. Meiji, you don't have to interfere in my affairs. When this opportunity appears, we'll rely on our own abilities. With that said, heaven immortal Luo Yang drove the chariot into the abyss. He coward. The bewitching woman chuckled. We'll meet again in the heaven ranking contest. You won't be able to avoid it. As she said that, the bewitching woman rode on the auspicious cloud and entered the abyss as well. Su Zimo stood far away from the abyss and frowned. The commotion this time round was way too great. Any one of the cultivators flying in the air could easily kill him. There were many mystic immortals like him in the surroundings. All of them had solemn expressions and did not dare to act rashly. Neither did they dare to approach. All of them watched from afar. Su Zimo caught sight of some cultivators from the 8 factions in the crowd nearby. Although the opportunity was tempting, it would not be worth it if they lost their lives. Many cultivators had already died in the abyss before they even caught sight of any true treasures. Su Zimo waited patiently outside the abyss for a long time. Almost all the experts from the outside had already entered the abyss before he was prepared to make a move. All of a sudden, the divine light shone brightly in the abyss. Immediately after, rays of light burst out from within the divine radiance, splashing in all directions and surging out. A jade-green beam of light was charging towards Su Zimo's direction. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The green beam of light was a jade dagger. It was rather exquisite, and was not damaged at all after so many years. Chapter 1873. Su Zimo reached out and took the jade dagger. As soon as his palm touched the sharp edge of the jade dagger, he felt a sharp pain, and a wound appeared on his palm. Amazing, Su Zimo thought to himself. After all, even though he was a 6th-rank mysterious immortal, the defensive strength of his Azure Lotus true body was extremely formidable. It was impervious to fire, water and weapons. Even a profound-rank Khanate magic treasure might not be able to injure him. He didn't expect that his palm would be injured just by lightly touching the jade dagger. The dagger was at least an Earth-grade Dharma treasure, and its grade was definitely not low. In that case, the divine light that was emitting from all over the abyss was most likely this kind of Dharma treasure. Su Zimo looked around. On both sides of the abyss, there were some cultivators who had not entered the abyss. Like him, they had picked up all kinds of Dharma treasures and checked them out. They were overjoyed as if they had found precious treasures. Su Zimo was about to put away the jade dagger when he felt a sense of danger. A heart-palpitating sharpness appeared in an instant and pierced towards the back of his head. Even before it arrived, he felt a sharp pain on his scalp. Oh no! The person who ambushed him was extremely swift and decisive. He could not avoid this fatal attack, even if he used other Dharma treasures. Su Zimo did not have time to think. He immediately activated his primordial spirit and released the true dragon's 9 flashes. Swoosh! Su Zimo's body flashed and disappeared from the spot. When Su Zimo reappeared, he was not far away and looked at the spot where he had been standing. A cultivator stood there. He was skinny and had shifty eyes, but his body exuded an extremely powerful aura. This aura was far beyond the mystic Aeon realm. Earth Immortal. The skinny Earth Immortal's eyes flashed with surprise when his attack failed. He did not expect that his sneak attack on a stage 6 mystic immortal would fail. Moreover, he did not even see how this stage 6 mystic immortal had escaped from his killing move. Interesting. The skinny Earth Immortal turned his head and stared at Su Zimo, who was not far away. He stretched out his hand and laughed. Hand over the dagger. You're just a level 6 mystic immortal. You don't deserve such a divine weapon. Su Zimo frowned slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he threw the jade dagger he had just obtained over. The gap between them was too great. Even if he used all his trump cards, he still had no chance of winning. Before an earthly immortal realm expert, it was difficult for him to escape even if he utilized the extreme speed divine ability of the Golden Rock. So there was no need to become enemies with this person for the sake of a magic treasure. Moreover, there were too many people here. It would do him no good to have a conflict with this Earth Immortal. He's a smart guy. The skinny Earth Immortal took the jade dagger and looked at it with joy. He flipped his hand and put the jade dagger away. Su Zimo threw the jade dagger over and retreated into the distance. Wait! The skinny Earth Immortal moved quickly and blocked Su Zimo's path in the blink of an eye. He sneered. Who said you could leave? Exalted Immortal, there are greater opportunities in the abyss. You don't have to waste your time on a mystic immortal like me. Su Zimo's heart sank, but he tried his best to stay calm. Humph! The skinny Earth Immortal smirked and released a powerful divine sense that enveloped Su Zimo. He asked coldly, "Just now you dodged my attack. What kind of move was that?" Su Zimo felt as if he had fallen into a swamp and was burdened with a heavy weight. The gap between their strength was too great. Su Zimo's face was cold, and he did not say a word. "It's okay if you don't say it. I'll search your soul and see for myself." With a ferocious glint in his eyes, the skinny Earth Immortal reached out and grabbed toward Su Zimo's head. Under the divine sense of an Earth Immortal, Su Zimo had to activate his blood chi and use all his trump cards if he wanted to break free. But if he did that, Qinglian's real identity would be exposed. Moreover, even if he used all his trump cards, it would be difficult for him to escape from an Earth Immortal. "Fellow cultivator, you've gone too far." Just then, a gentle and calm voice came from the sky not far away. Then, an even more powerful divine sense broke in and offset the divine sense of the skinny Earth Immortal. At the same time, the vital chi in front of Su Zimo fluctuated violently and formed a vital chi blade in a short time. He slashed at the skinny Earth Immortal. The skinny Earth Immortal looked serious, and a hint of fear flashed in his eyes. It seemed that he did not dare to meet the attack head-on. He quickly retreated and shouted, "Who's there?" Su Zimo, who had just escaped death, looked in the direction of the voice. He saw two figures standing in the air, a man and a woman. The man was tall and had shoulder-length hair. He was quite handsome, but the most attractive thing about him was his pair of deep and melancholic eyes. It was as if he had seen through the vicissitudes of life. The woman was stunning. Her skin was whiter than snow, her eyes were like water, and her fingers were slender. Her temperament was otherworldly, and she exuded an otherworldly aura. Both of them were wearing white Taoist robes. When they stood together, they looked like a pair of ethereal immortals. "Who are you?" The skinny Earth Immortal frowned. The melancholic man smiled and said, "Fellow cultivator, this Xian Immortal has already handed the dagger to you. Why do you have to kill him?" "Humph!" The skinny Earth Immortal sneered. "Even if I want to kill him, so what? A Xian Immortal from the lower world is like an ant. So what if I kill him? Let me give you two a piece of advice. Don't meddle in other people's business. Don't get yourself killed." As he spoke, the skinny Earth deity's hand carelessly touched the token at his waist. The melancholic man said calmly, "Square Island is just a Xian sect. It's nothing in the Dajin celestial nation." The token on the skinny Earth Immortal's waist was the sect token of Square Island. He originally wanted to use the name of his sect to intimidate the two of them. Unexpectedly, the melancholic man was not moved at all. The skinny Earth Immortal was somewhat indignant. He hesitated for a moment and glared at Su Zimo before turning to leave. Soon he entered the abyss. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. He came to the man and woman, bowed and thanked them. "Thank you for your help, exalted immortals. I will never forget your kindness. May I know your names?" "It's nothing. It's nothing." The melancholic man nodded and did not say anything. Although it was nothing, other than the two of them, no one else would offend the skinny Earth Immortal because of Su Zimo, a Xian Immortal. The woman in the white dress looked at Su Zimo and asked, "Are you also here to look for opportunities in the abyss?" "Yes, I'm here to try my luck." Su Zimo did not hide it. The woman in the white dress said, "This abyss is no small matter. It has alarmed many experts. Along the way, I've met a few elites on the Earth roll. Some sky immortals are here too," the melancholic man said with a serious expression. The woman in the white dress said gently, "With your cultivation, you'll most likely die in the abyss. You should be careful." The woman in the white dress did not say it explicitly, but she was reminding Su Zimo not to take the risk. "Thank you for your reminder, exalted immortals." Su Zimo thanked them again. The melancholic man and the woman in the white dress nodded at Su Zimo before they turned and left. They also disappeared into the abyss without leaving any name behind. Chapter 1874. There were fewer and fewer cultivators outside the abyss, and most of them had already leaped into the abyss. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and did not leave just like that. When he arrived at the edge of the abyss, the bronze square cauldron trembled slightly, as though it was extremely excited. This had never happened before. Even when he obtained the numinous treasure fragment in the Dark Knight workshop of Dragon Lake City, the bronze square cauldron merely trembled, without much of a reaction. In Su Zimo's opinion, the bronze square cauldron had already gained sentience and intelligence. There must be a reason for the bronze square cauldron to have such a reaction. At that thought, Su Zimo arrived at the edge of the abyss and looked down. Controlling his body, he descended carefully. Not long after, Su Zimo felt a strange feeling in his heart. It was as though he had passed through a water-like barrier with a hint of coldness, and arrived at a world that was completely different from Dragon Lake Planet. Su Zimo paused for a moment and continued descending. After a long time, he finally arrived at the bottom of the abyss. There was a sinister aura at the bottom of the abyss. Not a single blade of grass grew, and there were no signs of life. Instead, there were some white bones scattered around. Su Zimo scanned his surroundings and did not discover anything unusual. However, for some reason, he felt his heart palpitate after descending, as though a calamity was about to befall him. Su Zimo was on guard as he walked towards the source of the divine splendor in front of the abyss. Along the way, he saw many mystic immortals of different cultivation realms. Unlike Su Zimo, these mystic immortals looked excited. Among them, some of them had just obtained Dharma treasures from the divine splendor, and this trip was not in vain. However, most of the mystic immortals were unwilling to leave just like that, and wanted to continue forward to search for other opportunities. After walking for a while, Su Zimo suddenly stopped in his tracks. Right then, the divine splendor at the end of the abyss disappeared rapidly, and the entire abyss fell into darkness for a short period of time. What's going on? Could someone have obtained that utmost treasure? Even if someone obtained it, there would be a bloody battle. The ultimate owner of that utmost treasure is still unknown. A cultivator not far away whispered. This abyss is really strange. A 7th stage Xian immortal said. Logically speaking, with our cultivation, our eyesight shouldn't be affected even in the dark. But after entering this abyss, my vision and divine sense have been greatly restricted. Me too. The one who spoke was a rank 8 mystic immortal. These Xian immortals continued to move forward in the darkness. Su Zimo, on the other hand, had a solemn look on his face as he stared straight ahead, motionless. He was Qinglian's real body. Although his vision was greatly limited in the abyss, he was still much stronger than other Xian immortals. He could clearly see that in front of the abyss, a large amount of black fog was surging over. It was strange and surging like a tide. Some of the Xian immortals not far away did not notice this. It was said that a mysterious black fog existed in the abyss all year round, and the living beings on the Dragon Abyss planet could not get close to it. It was only because of the divine radiance emitted from the abyss recently that this mysterious black fog was dispelled. Now, the divine radiance had disappeared, and the mysterious black fog had actually enveloped them once again. Su Zimo was about to warn them when a miserable scream came from the black fog in front of them. Ah! Su Zimo's pupils contracted slightly. He saw a rank 7 Xian immortal fall into the black fog. In just a few breaths' time, he fell straight to the ground lifeless. Ah, what is this? Oh no, the black fog is coming. Run! The Xian immortals in the abyss were in chaos. They wanted to escape from the range of the mysterious black fog, but they could not escape at all. The black fog was also surging above the Xian immortals' heads. Some of the Xian immortals had just leaped into the air when they crashed into the black fog. Then, they turned into corpses and fell to the ground. Su Zimo saw some Earth immortal experts releasing their spirit consciousnesses and summoning their Dharma treasures, allowing them to travel through the black fog. This was the difference in cultivation level. This mysterious black fog could easily kill a Xian immortal, but it could not hurt an Earth immortal. Hee. An Earth immortal flew over the Xian immortals' heads and sneered. A bunch of ants. How dare you come here with such little cultivation level? You really don't know what's good for you. Su Zimo was wary and quickly retreated. Although Qinglian's real body was powerful, he did not dare to come into contact with the black fog. However, he was forced to stop after a few steps. Behind him, a large amount of the mysterious black fog was also enveloping him. There was no way out. Originally, there were still many Xian immortals shouting around him. However, in just a short while the surroundings were dead silent. All the Xian immortals nearby had died in the mysterious black fog. Seeing the black fog surging towards him, Su Zimo did not dare to hesitate. He immediately activated his blood qi and released rays of green light around his body. However, this green light only caused the surrounding black fog to stop for a moment. The mysterious black fog quickly enveloped him again. The green light also quickly dimmed in the black fog. The mysterious black fog exuded a decaying aura of death and was extremely terrifying. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and conjured the Samadhi Dao fire that circled around him. The Samadhi Dao fire could burn and refine evil, and was always successful. However, the moment the 3 balls of flames appeared, they were extinguished upon contact with the black fog. Su Zimo was alarmed. He released the heaven-slaying sword art, earth-slaying sword art, and many other divine powers and secret skills in a single breath, wanting to defend against the corrosion of the mysterious black fog. However, those trump cards only managed to delay it for a moment. Before long, the black fog enveloped him once more. Su Zimo flicked his sleeves and released the 9 heavens living soil. The yellow sand surged and shone with a golden light, forming a barrier around him. The 9 heavens living soil was indeed mystical. The black fog that enveloped him could not corrode the shimmering golden light on the yellow sand. However, there was quite a bit of black fog that seeped in through the gaps in the yellow sand and continued to coil towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo lamented internally. He had not expected to be forced into a corner by the mysterious black fog before he could encounter any opportunities or obtain any treasures after entering the abyss. He had already released all his trump cards, but they could not defend against the terrifying corrosive power of the mysterious black fog. Am I really going to die here today? Su Zimo clenched his fists slightly. To him, such a way of dying was truly baffling. Su Zimo was indignant and had a menacing expression. His eyes shone with the divine light as he roared at the black fog around him. It was like the roar of a dragon and the cry of a phoenix that contained a supreme will. All of a sudden, the surrounding wisps of mysterious black fog seemed to have sensed something and paused in front of Su Zimo before dissipating into nothingness. Fupin Chinese. Chapter 1875. The surrounding black fog was still surging and fluctuating. However, for some reason, the black fog surged 3 feet away from Su Zimo's body, but did not move forward to cause any harm to him. Su Zimo was surprised and delighted. He tried to take a few steps forward. The black fog also surged backward, but remained within 3 feet of him. It did not exceed half an inch. Could it be related to my dragon phoenix roar? Su Zimo stood on the spot and pondered for a while. He did not have an accurate answer, and decided to continue forward. Many mystic immortals had fallen in this mysterious black fog. Su Zimo did not waste any time. He walked to the side of these mystic immortals and collected all their storage bags. In just a short while, the faces of these fallen mystic immortals were covered with black spots like livor mortis. It was extremely creepy. The surrounding black fog was pervasive. The range of Su Zimo's vision and divine sense was also extremely limited. He did not walk fast. Not long after, Su Zimo suddenly sensed a flickering light not far from his left side. Could it be some kind of treasure? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he followed the light. After walking for dozens of steps, Su Zimo stopped. He focused his gaze and could not help but be stunned. Not far in front of him stood a young man in the black fog. He did not look old, but had already cultivated to Mystic Essence Stage 6, the same stage as him. Normally, mystic immortals would not be able to resist the corrosion of the black fog. However, there was a light green barrier around this young man. It flickered with a faint light. The barrier was already covered with cracks. Su Zimo saw it clearly. There was a jade pendant hanging on this young man's waist. It was the power of this jade pendant that condensed this light green barrier and blocked the surrounding mysterious black fog. However, It was obvious that this jade pendant was about to shatter. If the jade pendant shattered, this young man would definitely die without the protection of this barrier. Su Zimo's vision was far superior to his peers. Therefore, Su Zimo stood in the black fog and looked at the young man. However, the young man could not see Su Zimo. In his line of sight, all he could see was a mysterious black fog surging towards him. The young man panted slightly, his small face filled with panic and fear. The youth clenched his fists and widened his eyes. He looked at the increasing number of cracks on the barrier, and his clear eyes were filled with despair. Ka. The sound coming from the screen was like the sound of death. It was soul-stirring. Bang! A crisp sound rang out. The barrier around him was unable to withstand the continuous erosion of the mysterious black mist, and shattered with a bang. The jade pendant at his waist also shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. The youth's eyes dimmed. He knew very well what would happen to him if he was swallowed by the black fog. He saw with his own eyes that those level 7 and level 8 mystic immortals, who were stronger than him, perished in the black mist. If it wasn't for the jade pendant his father gave him, he wouldn't have been able to hold on until now, and would have died here long ago. The young man sighed in his heart. He could only watch helplessly as the black fog surged towards him. Suddenly, the young man opened his eyes wide, and his heart shook greatly. A person actually walked out of the black fog in front of him. This person had black hair and green clothes. He had delicate features and a calm and indifferent expression as he walked over leisurely within the terrifying black fog. The mysterious black fog was about to swallow him, but when this person walked over slowly, the surrounding black fog actually retreated. The young man subconsciously opened his mouth wide, and his eyes revealed deep shock. "It's you." When this person arrived before him, the young man's heart shook, and he asked involuntarily, "You know me?" Su Zimo's brows raised slightly as he looked down at the young man, and replied with a question. I've seen you once." The young man seemed to be slightly afraid, and he lowered his head slightly. "It was at Dragon Lake City, when you were fighting the wolf army." Su Zimo smiled. The battle at Dragon Lake City had alarmed many cultivators of Dragon Lake City. Unexpectedly, this young man had witnessed that battle as well. "Big brother Su, thank you for saving my life." The young man quickly recovered from his shock, and was about to kneel down before Su Zimo. "There's no need for that." Su Zimo waved his sleeves and brought the young man up. "It's dangerous here. I can't split my attention to take care of you. I'll send you outside. You should leave as soon as possible." "All right." The young man was very smart, and did not hesitate as he nodded his head forcefully. Su Zimo brought the young man, and a pair of rock wings grew out from his back. His figure rose rapidly, and he returned to the top of the abyss in no time. After leaving the range of the black fog, Su Zimo put the young man down and said, "Go on. Be careful on the way." After he finished speaking, Su Zimo turned around and leaped down towards the abyss. "Big brother Su, you have to be careful too," the young man shouted from behind. "My name is Su Xiaotian. If you go to Dragon Lake City again, remember to look for me." Su Zimo's figure had already entered the black fog and disappeared. The young man stood at the edge of the abyss and looked at the black fog for a long time with an unwilling expression. But he still chose to leave and ran towards the distance. Not long after, Su Zimo returned to the bottom of the abyss and continued forward. At first, the bones on the ground were still rather scattered. As he continued to go deeper, the number of bones gradually increased. After walking for a while more, Su Zimo actually saw a complete corpse on the ground not far away. This corpse was relatively well preserved. Its clothes were rather ancient, and were extremely different from the clothes on Dragon Lake Planet. It was unknown how many years it had been dead. Su Zimo walked forward and waved his sleeves, wanting to sweep up the storage bag at the waist of the corpse. His sleeve lightly touched the corpse, and the corpse turned into dust, scattering into the black fog, and disappearing without a trace. Even the storage bag turned into ashes in an instant. "Have you heard? There seems to be a heaven-grade Dharma treasure appearing in this abyss. It's said that there's more than one. I wonder if we can obtain it." Right at this moment, a series of conversations sounded out from the black fog not far away. Su Zimo frowned slightly and stopped in his tracks. Boom! Right at this moment, a sound came from the abyss. Immediately after, rays of divine light burst out from the end of the abyss and shot out in all directions, passing through the black fog and bringing endless light. Ah, it's a heaven-grade Dharma treasure. Hurry up and snatch it. A series of soft shouts came from the surrounding black fog. Before Su Zimo entered the abyss, such a situation had occurred in the abyss. However, most of the Dharma treasures that burst out at that time were earth-grade Dharma treasures. Su Zimo had originally obtained a jade dagger, but it was snatched away by a skinny earth immortal, and he was almost killed. And now, there were heaven-grade Dharma treasures among these divine lights. When these divine lights arrived in the sky, Su Zimo could clearly see that there were ancient bells, jade cauldrons, flying swords, and pitch-black ancient umbrellas. The divine light emitted by these Dharma treasures dispersed the black fog and illuminated the abyss as if it was daytime. Su Zimo was originally in the black fog at the bottom of the abyss. His vision was limited, and he could not see the situation around him. Now many Dharma treasures had appeared. Su Zimo subconsciously looked up, and his expression changed drastically. Fuping Chinese. Chapter 1876. Above Su Zimo's head, there were at least 100 earth immortals scattered in the air above the abyss. Originally, the abyss was shrouded in black mist, blocking one's vision. Su Zimo was groping his way forward at the bottom of the abyss. He did not notice that he was already below the earth immortals. Of course, with so many magical treasures appearing, the earth immortals ignored Su Zimo, even if they saw him. This ancient bell is mine. One of the earth immortals stretched out his hand and grabbed an ancient bell that was emitting a misty light. Humph! With your cultivation, you don't deserve to use this ancient bell. Another level 7 earth immortal pointed at the earth immortal in front of him. A huge axe was formed, and behind it, there was a surging tide. It chopped down with a terrifying momentum. Get lost! Another earthly immortal realm expert rushed over and stretched out his hand to grab the axe that was descending from midair. He shouted lightly, "I see immortal palm." A giant palm, filled with cold air, condensed into form. In the abyss, the temperature plummeted. The yuan qi of heaven and earth seemed to be frozen. This was a great skill. Crack! 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 Before the axe could land, the surging tide behind it froze into ice. The icy immortal hand grabbed the axe forcefully, crushing it into pieces. In the sky, a great battle between the earth immortals broke out. Immortal skills and magical treasures appeared one after another, causing the yuan qi of heaven and earth to fluctuate violently. The chaotic battle had just begun, and it was extremely tragic. Some earth immortals fell from the sky in a bloody mist, and the smell of blood filled the air. Su Zimo's face was solemn. He did not dare to stay in the same place. His body flashed, and he quickly retreated away from the battlefield. He was afraid that he would be affected by the power of the battle. With his current cultivation, only death would await him if he was involved in such a battle. Fortunately, the attention of the earth immortals was focused on fighting for the magical treasures. No one cared about Su Zimo. Suddenly, in the abyss, a faint sound of a zither was heard. The sound of the zither seemed to be filled with a strange power. After it was heard, the earth immortals who were fighting fiercely in the sky stopped. Many earth immortals widened their eyes and looked confused. Everyone seemed to be frozen in midair by the sound of the zither. They could not move at all. Next, amidst the sound of the zither, the sound of a flute was heard. It was like crying and complaining. It was melancholy and lingering in the air. Thump! Thump! The earthly immortal realm experts in midair seemed as if they'd lost their souls, and they fell down from midair and crashed heavily onto the ground. No matter if it was a stage 1 earth immortal or a stage 9 earth immortal, none of them were spared. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of earth immortal realm experts had fallen to the ground. Strange smiles appeared on the faces of these earthly immortal experts. Hiss! Su Zimo took in a breath of cold air. He sensed clearly that these earthly immortal realm experts didn't have the slightest vitality. Over 100 of 100 immortals had fallen. At this moment, immortals, and not immortals. As he listened to the faint sounds of the zither and flute, Su Zimo felt as though his essence spirit was about to collapse, and his soul was dissipating. Ah! Su Zimo growled and shook his head furiously, trying to break free from the sound of the zither and flute. However, the sound of the zither and flute was endless. It flowed into his ears continuously. A strange and unpredictable force seeped into his sea of consciousness. He could not resist or break free from it. Su Zimo's eyes were lifeless. Gradually, a strange smile appeared on his face, just like those earth immortals who had fallen. All of a sudden, there was a sudden change in Su Zimo's sea of consciousness. The strange force seeped into his sea of consciousness and came into contact with the bronze square cauldron. The bronze square cauldron trembled and buzzed. Mysterious golden Sanskrit characters appeared on the undamaged inner wall of the bronze square cauldron. They were sacred and peaceful. Every word contained a shocking power. Wang Ma and I Pa. A series of ancient Sanskrit chants rang in Su Zimo's sea of consciousness. The illusory figures of Buddhas appeared and chanted loudly. They were sacred and vast and resounded in his sea of consciousness. Initially, Su Zimo would not have been able to escape death against the sound of the zither and flute. But now, the vast Sanskrit chants suppressed the sound of the zither and flute completely and chased it out of his sea of consciousness. Su Zimo gradually woke up and regained his consciousness. Swoosh! Swoosh! Right then, two divine lights sped over from the end of the abyss and stopped not far away from Su Zimo. On the left was an ancient zither that was around 3 feet and 5 inches long. It had a total of 7 strings and was made entirely of parasol tree wood. It was beautiful and had an ancient charm with hidden patterns. Just now, the faint sound of the zither was produced by that ancient zither. In front of this guqin, no one played it, but the sound of the guqin was still endless. However, Su Zimo's essence spirit was enveloped by the vast and sacred Sanskrit chants, and the faint sound of the zither could not seep in. On the right was a pitch-black 9-jointed flute. When the wind blew, the sound of the flute could be heard from the 8 holes. It was inexplicable. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Su Zimo would not have believed that the 100 earth immortals just now were killed by the zither and flute before him. The ancient zither and ancient flute exuded a vicissitude of time. More importantly, there was no spirit consciousness fluctuation from the ancient zither and ancient flute. In other words, the 2 Dharma treasures did not have an owner yet. Could they be spirit channeling Dharma treasures? Su Zimo was shocked. Such a situation could only occur if the Dharma treasures were spirit channeling. Right then, the ancient zither and ancient flute circled Su Zimo a few times, as though they were scrutinizing Su Zimo. Thereafter, the ancient zither and ancient flute gradually approached Su Zimo. At that moment, Su Zimo could no longer sense any killing intent from the 2 Dharma treasures. Spirit channeling Dharma treasures like this were equivalent to having spiritual intelligence. After losing their owner, they could choose their own owner. Now the ancient zither and ancient flute found it strange that Su Zimo could resist their sound. They had already chosen Su Zimo to be their owner. Su Zimo realized that these 2 Dharma treasures were spirit channeling Dharma treasures, and was secretly delighted. He activated his spirit consciousness and took out the bronze square cauldron, ready to feed the ancient zither and ancient flute to the bronze square cauldron. Unexpectedly, the moment the bronze square cauldron appeared, the ancient zither and ancient flute paused, as though they had seen something extremely frightening. The sound of the zither and flute suddenly disappeared. The ancient zither and ancient flute both quieted down. The next moment, the ancient zither turned into a stream of light and ran away, as though it was running for its life. The ancient flute also followed closely behind. These 2 Dharma treasures were extremely fast. Before Su Zimo could react, the 2 Dharma treasures had already disappeared. Su Zimo held the bronze square cauldron and stood rooted to the ground. Chapter 1877. The zither and flute flew at an extremely fast speed and disappeared in the blink of an eye, leaving behind a ground littered with corpses. Su Zimo looked at the corpses of the hundreds of earth immortals nearby and pondered for a moment. Then, he went forward and collected the storage bags of the Earth Immortals. Although the Earth Immortals were dead, there were still spirit consciousness imprints of the Earth Immortals on their storage bags. Su Zimo could not erase those imprints, nor could he see what was in the storage bags of the Earth Immortals. However, the storage bags of the hundreds of Earth Immortals were quite a haul. Su Zimo continued advancing along the abyss. At that moment, the number of corpses in the abyss increased. It was as though an extremely tragic battle had taken place here many years ago. Before long, the bronze square tripod in Su Zimo's consciousness quivered slightly. Could there be a spirit channeling dermic treasure nearby? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he began searching around. Not long after, he found a sword hilt between the two corpses. Su Zimo went forward and gripped the sword hilt, pulling it out forcefully. Clang! A long sword was pulled out from the dust, and let out a clear sword hum. Unfortunately, the sword was filled with cracks. Even if it was a spirit channeling dermic treasure, it had lost its sentience, and was clearly crippled. Su Zimo shook his wrist gently. Unable to withstand the power, the sword shattered into pieces and scattered all over the ground. For most cultivators, those shards were useless. However, for the bronze square tripod, it was fine even if they were spirit treasure shards. It could refine and absorb them to repair the cracks on the tripod. Waving his sleeves, Su Zimo collected the sword shards and tossed them into the bronze square tripod. True enough, an extremely terrifying heat burst forth from the tripod and started refining the sword shards, absorbing the power within to repair the cracks. Of course, there were way too many cracks on the tripod. Even after devouring those shards, it could only repair 2 or 3 of the cracks. It was still far from being able to repair the second wall of the tripod completely. After devouring these fragments, the first wall of the bronze square cauldron also showed a slight change. If Su Zimo had not been paying close attention to the changes in the bronze square cauldron, he might not have noticed it. The first wall of the bronze square cauldron had been repaired a long time ago, but now, Su Zimo was able to capture a tiny fluctuation of life on this cauldron wall. Su Zimo looked thoughtfully at the lifelike divine dragon with its eyes closed carved on the outer wall of the bronze square cauldron. Back then, it was because he had swallowed a fragment of a spiritual treasure that the divine dragons on the outer wall had opened its eyes and taught him a powerful dragon secret technique. After imparting the secret technique, the dragon god closed its eyes again. There was no more movement on the wall of the cauldron. Su Zimo came up with a conjecture when he sensed the changes. If there were enough psychic magic treasures, or fragments of spiritual treasures, would the divine dragon on the cauldron wall wake up again? What sort of changes would an awakened divine dragon bring to the bronze square cauldron? Su Zimo had obtained the bronze square cauldron for quite some time now. However, up till now, he still had very little understanding of it. He did not know the origin, grade, function, power, or any changes in the divine powers of this cauldron. Perhaps, he would only be able to uncover the secret of this ancient cauldron after it was completely repaired. Su Zimo took a deep breath and continued forward. He was extremely cautious and did not move quickly. He had not walked far when the bronze square cauldron vibrated once more. Could there be another psychic magic treasure? Su Zimo was delighted and hurriedly searched the vicinity. Soon, he found a broken ancient bell under one of the corpses. Without hesitation, Su Zimo tossed the ancient bell into the bronze square cauldron and devoured it. A few more cracks on the second wall of the cauldron were repaired. As Su Zimo ventured deeper, he would be able to find psychic magic treasures left behind from the great battle every once in a while. Of course, after an unknown amount of time, the storage bags of perfected immortals had all turned into ashes. The treasures within could not withstand the baptism of time, and turned into dust as well. Only the psychic magic treasures that were scattered in the abyss could be preserved till now. Of course, those psychic magic treasures no longer had spirit consciousnesses, and were destroyed by time. Even so, those psychic magic treasures were great supplements for the bronze square cauldron. Su Zimo was both surprised and delighted as he advanced. He was delighted because the second wall of the bronze square cauldron was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The life fluctuations on the first wall of the cauldron were getting more obvious and intense as well. Although the divine dragon carved on the wall of the cauldron still had its eyes closed, it seemed like it could wake up at any moment. Along the way, Su Zimo gradually realized that this abyss was an ancient battlefield. Back then, he did not know what sort of great battle took place for so many corpses and psychic magic treasures to be left behind. This meant that many perfected immortals had fallen in that great battle back then. What shocked Su Zimo was that he had already seen the corpses of so many perfected immortals before he reached the end of the abyss. What would be at the end of the abyss then? Could there be existences that were even stronger than perfected immortals that died in that battle back then? As time passed by, Su Zimo was getting closer to the end of the abyss. In fact, he could even sense a series of tyrannical energy fluctuations coming from the front. A great battle seemed to have broken out at the end of the abyss. There was a high chance that many heaven immortals were fighting over there. The man called Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, who was driving the flood dragon chariot, and the seductive woman that even Heaven Immortal Luo Yang was wary of. There were no traces of those experts after they entered the abyss. There was a high chance that they were all gathered at the end of the abyss. Su Zimo stopped in his tracks and frowned with a grim expression. His gains from this trip to the abyss were already unimaginable. Not to mention the storage bags of the earth immortals and mystic immortals. Just the numinous treasure fragments that he had collected along the way and fed to the bronze square cauldron were priceless treasures. Almost half of the second wall of the bronze square cauldron had been repaired. Even if Su Zimo were to leave the abyss now, this trip would not have been in vain. If he were to continue deeper, his future would be uncertain, and it would be too dangerous. With his current means, he could not protect himself at all. Any heaven immortal expert could probably crush him to death with a single finger. However, since he had already come this far, he would feel indignant if he were to leave without taking a look at the end of the abyss. Su Zimo did not know that the earth immortals and heaven immortals at the end of the abyss were going through an unimaginable calamity. In this calamity, not many people would be able to leave alive. Chapter 1878. In the abyss, Su Zimo stood in place and pondered for a long time before he decided to move on. He came here mainly to find some opportunities, but in his heart, he also wanted to see what secrets were hidden in the abyss. The divine dragon on the bronze square cauldron led him to this star. Was it just for the spiritual treasure fragments in the abyss? At this moment, the bronze square cauldron in his sea of consciousness was slightly hot, exuding an emotion similar to excitement. Su Zimo walked along the edge of the abyss carefully and continued moving forward. He was tense, ready to escape as soon as he saw that the situation was not right. At the end of the abyss, the yuan qi of heaven and earth fluctuated violently, as if there was a fierce battle. The surrounding black fog became extremely thin in the aftermath. This spiritual magic treasure belongs to me. Whoever dares to have any ideas about it will be an enemy of me, Luo Yang, and will be killed without mercy. At the end of the abyss, a murderous roar came. Before he saw this person, Su Zimo's mind was filled with the image of the arrogant heaven immortal expert who drove the flood dragon chariot. At that time, an earth immortal's divine sense probed his body for a while, and that was enough to kill him. Hee. At this moment, a soft laugh came from the end of the abyss. A charming and soft female voice was heard. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, you have just snatched a seventh tribulation spiritual treasure. You can't take this soul-summoning banner. Give it to me. Seventh tribulation spiritual treasure? When he heard that, Su Zimo's mind was filled with confusion. Spiritual treasures were spiritual magic treasures. But what did the seventh tribulation mean? Could it be that the grades of spiritual magic treasures were not classified according to inferior grade, middle grade, superior grade and supreme grade? This was not impossible. After all, spiritual magic treasures meant that they had developed spiritual consciousness and spirituality. This was a qualitative leap. No matter what, he could be sure that this so-called soul-summoning banner was definitely a treasure that was not inferior to a seventh tribulation spiritual treasure. Otherwise, it would not have attracted the fight between Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji, my two fellow cultivators. Another voice sounded. There are not many well-preserved spiritual treasures in this ancient battlefield. Almost all of them were taken by the two of you. Your appetite is too big. Not bad. It's impossible for us to return empty-handed from this trip. Voices of injustice rang out from all around. What? You're not convinced? Luo Yang Celestial Immortal asked. Meiji chuckled and said, if worst comes to worst, we'll just keep fighting. Let's see who gets the soul-summoning banner in the end. In this short period of time, Su Zimo had gradually arrived at the end of the abyss. Narrowing his eyes, he looked through the faint black mist and focused his gaze. He saw dozens of figures standing in the air in front of him. Each of them was emitting an extremely terrifying aura. The surrounding Yuan Qi was agitated and surging violently. Even though the strength of these figures varied, all of them were Heavenly Immortal Realm experts. Celestial Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji were also there. At this moment, Luo Yang Celestial Immortal was holding a pitch-black wooden banner in her hand. It was about 3 feet long, and it was unknown what material the banner was made of. There seemed to be some kind of pattern engraved on it, but it was unclear what it was. This pitch-black wooden banner should be the soul-beckoning banner that just now, Luo Yang Tianxian was talking about. At this moment, Luo Yang Celestial Immortal was surrounded by dozens of Heavenly Immortal Realm experts. Meiji was also standing nearby, staring at him with a smile, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The battle was about to begin. On the ground, there were actually thousands of people scattered around. These thousands of cultivators were not Xian Immortals, but Earth Immortal Realm experts. Because the battlefield in the air was already occupied by dozens of Heavenly Immortals, these thousands of Earth Immortals could only land on the ground to avoid being affected. Most of these Earth Immortal Realm experts had the same idea. They wanted to come to the end of the abyss to see if they could find more opportunities and treasures. Usually cultivators who could come here would have more or less gained something. There were hundreds of corpses piled up on the ground, dripping with blood. It was obvious that a great battle had just broken out. Su Zimo took a quick look. Among these Earth Immortal Realm experts, he saw a familiar face. It was the skinny Earth Immortal who had snatched his jade dagger. However, he did not see the immortal couple. He did not know if they had left or died in the abyss. At this moment, all the Earth Immortals' attention was on the dozens of Heavenly Immortals in the air. No one noticed Su Zimo's existence. Or rather, even if someone saw Su Zimo, they did not think much of him. Even if there were thousands of Earth Immortals at the end of the abyss, they would lose their lives if they were not careful, let alone a mere Xian Immortal. Kill! Suddenly, a loud roar came from the sky. The great battle between Heavenly Immortals had broken out again. Burning sky and boiling sea. Falling stars. Heavenly slash. Peerless super skills were unleashed one after another. In an instant, the sky changed color, sand and pebbles flew, and the entire abyss shook violently. When one reached the Heavenly Origin realm, they could integrate the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth into their super skills and unleash them. Only super skills that integrated the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth could unleash their true power. In the air, flames burned fiercely, and the entire sky was burning red. The waves were rolling and bubbling, and it was completely boiling. Ancient stars fell from the sky one after another. These were no longer illusions created by super skills. These stars had condensed into a solid form, and they brought with them an unstoppable force as they fell. Some of the Heavenly Immortals were hit by these ancient stars. Unable to withstand the terrifying power contained within them, their bodies exploded instantly, and blood splattered everywhere. But soon, this Heavenly Immortal used blood rebirth to reconstruct his body. Some of the Earth Immortals did not have such skills, and could not dodge in time. They were hit by the stars and died on the spot. When these stars fell to the ground, they created a huge crater. In the blink of an eye, the abyss was filled with devastation. The thousands of Earth Immortals below scattered and hid in all directions, afraid that they would be affected by the aftershocks of the Heavenly Immortals' attacks. Su Zimo's face was pale as well, and he stayed far away. On the battlefield in the air, heavenly immortal Luo Yang did have the right to be arrogant. Even under the siege of dozens of heavenly immortals, he was still undefeated and fighting in all directions. Only Meiji, who was at the periphery, could make heavenly immortal Luo Yang wary. Meiji was very smart. She did not fight heavenly immortal Luo Yang head-on, and only moved around the periphery. Occasionally, she would make heavenly immortal Luo Yang defend with all his might, and he would be flustered. At this rate, heavenly immortal Luo Yang would not be able to protect his soul-summoning banner. At this moment, Su Zimo suddenly felt his heart palpitate. On the battlefield, there was a sudden change. The pitch-black wooden banner in heavenly immortal Luo Yang's hand suddenly trembled and released rays of pitch-black light that shot into the sky. Heavenly immortal Luo Yang was the first to bear the brunt. Caught off guard, he grunted, and his palm exploded under the pitch-black light, turning into a cloud of blood mist. Chapter 1879. Outside Dragon Abyss Planet. A stream of light sped over and suddenly stopped, revealing a figure. It was a young man in a white Taoist robe that was spotless. A mysterious brilliance circulated around his body, and he emitted a terrifying aura. His gaze was like a torch that could penetrate the void and land in the abyss on Dragon Abyss Planet. A pitch-black light burst forth from the abyss and shot into the clouds. The young man's eyes shone brightly and revealed a hint of joy as he said repeatedly, "Good, good, good. A pure young 9 tribulations. I didn't cross the galaxy in vain." After saying that, the young man's figure flashed and disappeared from the spot, speeding towards the abyss. Not long after the young man disappeared, another golden light descended outside Dragon Abyss Planet. This was a gigantic golden ant comparable to a divine elephant. Its entire body seemed to be made of molten steel and shone with a golden light. Its eyes revealed a ferocious glint, and its aura was terrifying. A man sat on the back of the golden ant. This person was also wearing golden battle armor and was almost one with the ant beneath him. He had a head of golden hair, and his eyes were fixed on the abyss on Dragon Abyss Planet. "It's a pure young spirit treasure," the golden-armored man exclaimed softly with an excited expression. "Master, there seems to be an expert who just left this place. The aura he left behind should not be weaker than yours." The gigantic golden ant suddenly spoke in human language. "Yes." The golden-armored man nodded slightly. "I saw him. He should be the Moonlight Sword Immortal of Heaven and Earth Academy. This person is a little troublesome. Let's go." The golden-armored man pondered for a moment, and a hint of decisiveness flashed through his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "No matter what, a pure young spirit treasure that has gone through 9 tribulations can choose its own master. It's still unknown who this treasure belongs to." With that, the golden-armored man rode the gigantic ant beneath him and charged towards the abyss on Dragon Abyss Planet. The moment the golden-armored man disappeared, another figure appeared outside Dragon Abyss Planet. To think that the small planet would be so lively. This person spoke softly. It was actually a woman, and her voice was extremely pleasant like the sound of nature. The essence energy of heaven and earth that filled the galaxy started to gather around this woman. Dragon Abyss Planet, at the end of the abyss. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, celestial immortal Luo Yang's palm exploded into a bloody mist, causing an uproar. Among all the cultivators present, celestial immortal Luo Yang was the strongest existence. Meiji was probably the only cultivator who could fight him head-on. But who would have thought that something would happen to the black wooden banner and injure celestial immortal Luo Yang? Luo Yang Heaven Immortal let out a cry of agony and immediately withdrew from the scene. It was only the shattering of the palm, and to a heavenly immortal expert, it wasn't a fatal injury. But what terrified Luo Yang Celestial was that his wound was shrouded in a mysterious power that prevented him from regrowing his severed limb. There was something strange about this soul-summoning banner. Heavenly Immortal Luo Yang reacted extremely quickly and made a prompt decision. Without even thinking, she gave up on the spirit-beckoning banner and retreated. Fortunately, he reacted in time and was able to save his life. This soul-summoning pan was originally only 3 feet long, and the banner was drooping. It looked lifeless and lifeless. However, under the shroud of the pitch-black light, the soul-summoning banner expanded to a height of 100 feet instantly. The gigantic banner unfurled, and the patterns on it were revealed as well. On one of the banners, there was a majestic figure that shone with a golden divine light. It was as though a heavenly god had descended and could not be looked at directly. On the other banner, there was another burly figure that had 2 horns on its head. It was shrouded in black chi and looked like a terrifying heavenly fiend. The golden divine light and pitch-black fiend light shone and intertwined, illuminating the abyss in a sinister manner. The 100-foot-tall soul-summoning banner began to sway in the air, as if someone was shaking it from below. The gigantic banner swept towards the surrounding heavenly immortals. Celestial immortal Luo Yang reacted extremely quickly and dodged by a hair's breadth without being touched by the banner. However, among the dozens of heavenly immortals surrounding him, a small portion of them reacted slower and were stunned for a moment before being engulfed by the gigantic banner. The gigantic banner was like an ancient behemoth that swallowed those heavenly immortals. The soul-summoning banner swayed, and the banner fell off, reappearing those heavenly immortals before long. Originally, every single move of these heavenly immortal experts was capable of erupting with a force that shook the heavens and the earth. However, in the blink of an eye, those heavenly immortals who were engulfed by the soul-summoning banner no longer had any signs of life. There were no injuries on those heavenly immortals. However, by the time they fell from the banner, they were already dead and fell heavily onto the ground as withered corpses. Pust! The remaining cultivators gasped, and their faces turned pale from fright. So many heavenly immortal realm experts had perished without making a single sound, and they died without knowing why. Some of the heavenly immortals were not even engulfed, and were merely touched by the gigantic banner, before falling straight from midair, dead. It was as though the souls of those heavenly immortals were all sucked away by the soul-summoning banner. Celestial immortal Luo Yang's eyes widened in shock and fear. If he was a step slower, he would have died here like those heavenly immortals. His 9 WRMS were not as lucky as him, and were killed by the soul-summoning banner. The ancient war chariot also fell to the ground and dimmed. What kind of numinous treasure is that? It's so terrifying. A guess flashed through celestial immortal Luo Yang's mind. Could it be? When Meiji saw that the situation was bad, she had already retreated far away with a frown. Run! The remaining heavenly immortals shouted and fled in all directions. Those heavenly immortals realized that they could not defend against the power of the soul-summoning banner. The 100-feet-tall soul-summoning banner swayed like a banner, causing the entire Dragon Abyss star to shake continuously. On the 2 sides of the soul-summoning banner, 2 tall and sturdy figures emerged. Many cultivators were shocked. The 2 figures drawn on the banner actually came to life.